Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to call to order the Board of School Directors Special Legislative Meeting for Monday, January the 8th, 2024. The time is 6:00 p.m. Ms. Evans, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Evans.
Present.
Ms. Ionetti.
Present.
Ms. Redding.
Present.
Ms. Sherpier.
Present.
Dr. Thomas.
Present.
Mr. Sirota.
Present.
Mr. Warschauer.
Present.
Mr. Wallach.
Present.
8 present. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Welcome, everyone, tonight to our special legislative meeting. It's a very serious reason we are gathered here tonight, and I want to do a couple things in opening. But first, I'm going to ask Ms. Evans to read the notice of our meeting. So whenever there's a special legislative meeting, we are required by school code and law to advertise that meeting formally, which we have done, and we're also required to read a summary of that notice, which Ms. Evans will do right now.
The Upper Dublin School District Board of School Directors will hold a special legislative meeting for the purpose of filling the vacant board seat on Monday, January 8th, 2024, 6 p.m. in the Upper Dublin High School Cardinal Room, 800 Loch Alsh Avenue, Fort Washington, PA.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. So I want to flush that out a little bit. I have one announcement to make, and I want to explain the process, how we're going to operate here this evening. As Ms. Evans said, we are here tonight to select a candidate to fill the vacant board seat that was created by Ms. Abarvia's resignation. That happened on December the 13th, 2023. By law, we have the responsibility to fill that position by appointment within 30 days. As everybody in the community knows, we selected an appointment process that called for applications of interested citizens that wish to apply for the seat. And tonight we're going to have an interview process that I will explain that is part of that application process. The board received 6 applications, which all met the minimum criteria to qualify as a school board member. Those qualifications, again, are established by law and by school code. You have to be 18 years of age, you have to be a resident of the district for 1 year, and there's certain other obligations in terms of either positions or things you cannot have done. All 6 of our applicants met those qualifications. We did have one applicant, Mr. Rao, who withdrew this afternoon. So we do have 5 applicants tonight that are proceeding through with their applications. As I said, we're replacing Ms. Abarvia's seat on the board. One thing that I wanted to announce to the community is, as people know, back in December, as president, I was tasked with assigning board members to committees. And at that time, we had an open position on the Finance Committee. And what I'm going to announce this evening is appointing myself to that position temporarily. And that's being done for a number of reasons, the most salient of which is when we have a new member join, just like I did back in November and December, what we like to do and what our process is we talk to the people that are joining the board and figure out either where their interest is, where there's opportunities on the board, and try to find the best possible fit in terms of committee structure. As everyone knows, the way our board operates, we have committee meetings, finance, education, and policy, that are discussions where the board really ferrets out issues and discusses issues always in public, as we're required to do by law. Those committees then are empowered to make recommendations to the full board, which is voted upon at our legislative meeting. So in order to afford us an opportunity to get to know a new board member who hopefully we will decide upon this evening in the process I'm going to talk about, we want to provide that opportunity. So at least for January's finance meeting, people will see me sitting up in that committee chair, and then we will revisit committee assignments thereafter once we know who's going to be on the board. So tonight, we are going to do an interview process. First, I want everyone to know there's no legal requirements how to conduct interviews except for really 2 things. They have to be done in public, And after there are interviews, there have to be or can be deliberations, and most importantly, a vote that is done in public. All three of those things can and will happen this evening: public interviews, deliberation as necessary by the board, and a public vote. We're very happy that we had 6, now 5 applicants coming before us. We can only select one candidate. We have 5 qualified people that all applied for this job. We thank the candidates for their interest in advance. As everyone hopefully knows, or if not, they'll find out, being on the school board is not a paid position. There is no compensation. It is a significant time commitment. I think all of us that sit up here, even the new people who've only been on for a month or so, realize the significance of this and what we aim to do for the community. And so everybody that's applying for this position, thank you for that interest. Thank you for wanting to be part of this board. Thank you for wanting to be part of a school board to lead our school district and our community forward. And we truly do hope. As I say, we're only going to be able to pick one tonight. The other 4 candidates, and even the candidate that withdrew, please stay involved. There are many ways to be involved in our school district and our community. And as people that have been put into these positions, we always encourage that amongst everyone in our community. The format for tonight is going to be a series of panel interviews is how I'll describe it. So before the meeting, each of the 5 candidates met with Dr. Smith, and letters were randomly chosen for a candidate batting order, in a sense. And when the time is appropriate for the interviews to start, the candidates will come up and they're going to sit in their letter-assigned order. We have 7 questions that the board will be asking of the candidates this evening. And we're going to start with, like, the very first question is going to go to candidate A, go first and down the line. Then the second question will start with candidate B and go down the line. And we've designed this purposely so that each candidate gets to go first for a question and last for a question. Now, you're going to say there's 5 candidates and 7 questions. So what are we doing with questions 6 and 7? So the answer is that Mr. Leckerman has his little basket over there, and we're going to randomly pick who goes first again. We're going to pick that letter out of a hat. So number 6 will be somebody, and number 7 will be somebody. And that way we have no idea essentially who's going first on those extra questions. After we ask those questions, and you'll see the way it's going to happen is each board member will ask a question. I think I get 2, and we'll go around the table so that each board member gets to voice a question. It's not necessarily that board member specific question. These were questions that were generated as a group by the board in an effort to try to get to know the candidates as best as we can. Like I said, we solicited applications. We received applications that included a letter of interest, a resume, a brief questionnaire that had, I think, 5 questions, if I remember correctly, and a certain other legal documents and disclosures that were required as part of the application. But the interview process tonight is really for us to try to get to know better these 5 candidates in order to make a decision. For the candidates, I would ask and suggest that each candidate answer the question on their own so that their answer stands alone. I'm not sure that it'll really be useful to the board to necessarily debate other answers. It clearly won't be useful to us for candidate 4 to mimic what candidate 2 said. Be yourself. Be open. Tell us about yourself in the context of answering the questions. That'll be hopefully helpful for us. We would like the candidates' answers to be as comprehensive as possible, but also succinct. We're not going to put a time limit per se on a candidate's response. We suggest about 2 minutes a question, but we're not going to necessarily enforce that. But succinctness, brevity can often be a useful tool, and so to the candidates, as I said, please be complete, thorough yourself, and try to be as succinct as possible in your responses. After all the questions are asked in that format, there'll be a brief opportunity for any follow-up questions that any board members wish to ask. We have as a board, have committed to focus any follow-up questions on the answers that the candidates have given. So candidates, if there is a follow-up question, it will be derived from something that you said or something that was raised during the process. So you don't necessarily, and you shouldn't expect like an 8th question out of left field. It'll be somehow related to something that has already been articulated. After that, we will dismiss the candidates from the question table that you can see in front of us, and the board will then have an opportunity for deliberation and discussion. When the time is appropriate, we'll have a call for nominations, at which point board members can nominate any of the candidates, and we will take as many nominations as board members wish to have. At that point, once we close nominations, and there'll be a kind of a formal vote process to make that happen, then we will have a vote. Our policies require that vote takes place by written ballot. So we each have a series of ballots in these manila envelopes in front of us, and we will mark a ballot. They'll be collected, and then Ms. Evans will read, or Mr. Leckman, one of the two of them, will read who each board member voted for. The evening essentially comes to an end when a candidate gets 5 votes. We have to have a majority. There are 8 people currently sitting on the board, so a vote of 5 moves a candidate forward to take the oath of office. We are prepared. Ms. Evans is prepared this evening to administer that oath of office at the end of the meeting, and we hope to reach that majority vote and welcome somebody to the board. Our process, as you can see tonight, we have 6 of us that are sitting here at the table. We do have 2 board members on Zoom this evening, and we're glad that that technology allows them to participate. They will participate. They're not going to ask questions. We thought it would be a little awkward to have the voice for the questions coming through Zoom, but if they have follow-up questions, they will have the same ability to follow up as any of us do, and they have a process where they'll be submitting their written votes to Mr. Leckman and Ms. Evans in order that they can be recorded in accordance with board policy. I know I've covered a lot. Members of the board or the administration, anything that I have forgotten in terms of tonight's process? Ms. Sherbier.
I just want to mention that to the audience, you will see us probably taking notes or typing on our laptops. That's no disrespect to the candidates, but that is our attempt to make good notes. Thank you.
Excellent point. Anything else? Okay. So with that, as we do in any legislative meeting and even any special legislative meeting, we do have an opportunity for public participation this evening. If anyone wishes to address the board in advance of the interview process, please approach the microphone. Please state your name and where you reside in the township, and you will have 4 minutes for comment that Ms. Evans will time on the clock.
Yes, I'll start it off. Andrew Bush, Maple Glen. Thank you, first of all, everybody, for having this meeting in front of the public and giving us the opportunity to speak. I do wish that we were able to speak after the panel interviews would happen. I know that this is a special meeting and there's no set rules or regulations, but it would have been nice for us to be able to speak after that, just to give you guys more perspective based off of our feelings about how the questions are asked and answered. I say that because in the first sentence of the agenda, it says the board believes it is in the best interest and best interest of the students of the district to hear comments from members of the public. But that should follow both sides of it, maybe before, like what we're doing now, and then after. I am a Democrat, but I do hope that you guys take every single one of these 5 people serious and as a legitimate candidate for this, and not just go off of a quote-unquote party line, if you will, which has kind of been what's happened in the election side, unfortunately. Anyway, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Hi, Charlie Brez, Nicky, Brezni, Fort Washington. So like everyone else here to speak about the vacancy, I would like to request the current school board members to consider the following when evaluating each candidate. School is more than just a place where children go to learn math, science, reading, writing, and other technical skills. It is a place where they also learn more in tangible skills from their peers as well as their teachers. They learn how to respect others, they learn how to interact, they learn how to be part of a larger world. School is also a place where every child should feel safe, respected, and understood from other students and from the adults in the school. No child should be meant to feel they are less than any other. Last year, this school board reaffirmed a policy supporting the privacy of LGBTQIA+ students. And I am so grateful for that reaffirmation, which helps to show that the school board and the district intends to promote an environment of inclusion and safety for historically marginalized students. We must continue to promote this environment for all students, regardless of their sexuality, gender, or race. We must also promote this environment for all students, whether they are Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, any other faith, or even atheists. A safe and inclusive environment is one that requires constant work. We must be aware of our own biases and at times actively work against those biases for the interest and the safety of the children in this school district so that they may grow up in an environment that loves, accepts, and supports them for who they are so they can be their best selves. I ask the current school board members to seek a candidate who will continue to promote such an environment.
Hi, my name's Billie Jean Erthel. I'm a 40-year resident and taxpayer in Upper Dublin, Fort Washington. And I've got 2 kids who've graduated from Upper Dublin High School and 1 kid who's now in middle school. And it's been a long, long history with the board. For me, it's just been watching on television. So this is my first meeting ever. But I've talked to other people, I've read a lot of things, and I guess what I'm looking for really, I have grown children who are in their mid-30s that don't want to buy a home in Upper Dublin because of our taxes and of some of our fiscal irresponsibly decisions, our slide in performance compared to districts that are our neighbors. And I have friends who are teachers. I work for a special education school. I am a physical therapist. And I guess what I'm looking for here is some real serious consideration about what the people who show up every day in the schools, and you know, people that I know, for example, like Ginny Vitella is someone who was at Fort Washington and started the Big Strides program and was there for the kids every day, making an inclusive and really developmentally wonderful environment for them. And I think sometimes I've seen some of the things where she's had some account, she's a CPA, and I think that's an important thing to have when you have a district with a large budget and a lot of moving parts. So I think curriculum's important, I think inclusivity is important, and I think budget's important. And as a real estate, you know, owner, taxpayer, I really like to see that we move forward with decisions that make our district the place that it was when I bought into it in 1986. I kind of want to see that we have that kind of talent and that kind of forward thinking and that kind of accountability and responsibility. I don't want to see it I'm a Democrat, a long life Democrat. And, you know, I still think that we have to look at our budget and look at the things that we're doing to make us competitive and to make sure that our children are competitive when they graduate. Thank you.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I'm going to start by reading what I a little comment I made on the petition. I'm hoping somebody's going to present the petition, or maybe they emailed it to you. I'm just going to get this out of the way because they're heavy, but I'll just leave them here. I brought some visual aids, went to my basement, which my husband keeps threatening me. I better clean up. I kind of know who attends meetings and approximately how many meetings they attend because I still attend a fair number, not as many as I used to. For people who don't know me, I was on the board a long time ago. 1999, I was elected. 2003, I got off one term. Okay, but this is an example of the time commitment. Jeff Wallach mentioned the time commitment. This is 4 finance meetings. I just did a quick count today. 4 finance meetings from this past year, 2023, it's 314 pages, okay? I think a lot of people know, maybe not everybody knows, that's just 4 finance meetings, okay? Every month, there's finance, there's legislative, there's policy, there's education, and then, unless you're on the board, you wouldn't maybe know this, but there's obviously sometimes, especially if it's contract time, there's a lot of personnel meetings which are allowed to be private, not a public meeting. So it is a big time commitment. I wanted to start with that. And I guess what I want to start with, let me read my petition and I'll see how my time goes. Ginny Vitella is the best qualified candidate applying for the open board position. She has a depth of knowledge that comes from attending hundreds of board meetings. As a CPA, she knows the budget and the financial issues inside and out. She also knows the details of how the district is funded, from local taxes to state funding to federal. She also understands our tax history and how it compares to other districts. In addition, Ginny is familiar with district policies, facilities, curriculum, and test scores. She ran for this position with a nonpartisan group of candidates twice. She got over 4,000 votes one time and I think over 3,500 another time. But I really wanted to stress, she made a deliberate choice to run with nonpartisan, meaning some were Republicans, some were Democrats. I think that is a real positive. Ginny's fair, she's honest, she's respectful of different opinions. I believe Ginny is the best candidate to work with the board and Dr. Smith in a positive, collaborative way to help the Upper Dublin School District continuously improve and work towards excellence. She would have no learning curve. She's, as I said, hundreds of meetings. She's attended about 10 years. A lot of you might know that. I know it kind of firsthand because for some odd reason, I've been at a lot of the meetings, but not nearly as many as she has been. That's pretty much what I wrote, but since I have 50 seconds left, I want to say she walks the walk. She's already demonstrated that she's qualified. She's at these meetings. She knows these documents so well. She asks intelligent questions, makes very, very respectful comments. She can hit the ground running, and that's why I said in my comment that I just read, and I think this is, I'm going to say it again, that she's the best person, in my opinion, to work with the board and Dr. Smith in a positive, collaborative way to help improve the Upper Dublin School District or work towards continuous improvement, because I believe every district, and especially Upper Dublin, should be working towards improvement and work towards excellence. 2 seconds. I guess I'll end it there. Thank you.
Everyone, Paige Meislick from Thomas Fitz. I joined the district about 7 years ago and really didn't know much about, what was entailed in voting for board members, or not. And during COVID, I didn't have a particular party or group to, look into different school district issues. So I just joined every Facebook group. But I have to say over the last, 3 or 4 years, after, viewing a lot of social media input, I've come to the conclusion for myself and for my family that I think Ginny Vitella would be the perfect candidate. She doesn't know me and I don't know her personally, so all I can speak to is the fact that time and time again, I've seen her advocate for kids. And what I really want in board members in general, not just the new person, is people to really think about our children, be very child-centered, and to really advocate for them and not take into account our own, personal, needs over the kids in the district. I've seen her support mental health for children. I don't know if she has any, personal experiences with that, but I think that's really important for our kids right now. So any support and advocacy for mental health in our children, I really want to support that candidate. She's also shown a lot of efforts and importance of sports, so both the mental and physical health for our kids. And I have to say, at the time when all the pools and everything were getting shut down during COVID, I was like, yes, shut it all down. Don't get anyone sick. And then I realized how important that social contact and physical exercise and things was for the kids. And I really wished I had, listened more to other parents who had athletes or kids who were older. Mine were, young, kindergartenish. So I really didn't understand the importance for older kids of that. And I do now. I've seen, Ginny be soliciting advice and suggestions. If people state something that they don't agree with, she says, well, what do you suggest? Do you have any, better ideas? So I see her as a person that, knowingly or unknowingly has been open to, discussion and feedback, which I think is really important at this time. And then, of course, I think, I don't know exactly what to say, but the events, around, the recent Middle Eastern conflict was really hurtful to my family in particular. And so whichever board member is going to make sure that every child feels safe going to school, regardless of, background, race, ethnicity, religion, whatever it is. I also support the fellow who came out to speak about, LGBTQ. Like, I think all of that is really important. And again, it's about putting our kids first and realizing that, they have a future ahead of them that is going to, has the possibility to be with less judgment and, prior conceived notions than we're walking through life with now. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you all. Really appreciate all the work you do. And I'm here to support you.
Hi, Irina Toiberman, Maple Glen. Unfortunately, the United States has become very polarized in all respects. This should not be the case with the school board. A school board should be a nonpartisan group of individuals who are doing what is best for the children in their community. I implore you to look at every candidate and judge them only for their ability to make our children's needs a priority. There are some excellent candidates here today that are highly qualified and just may not share your political affiliation. Some of these individuals have already participated in the election process and garnered a very respectable number of votes. As you conduct your interviews, do not forget the unprecedentedly high levels of anti-Semitism in the United States and around the world right now. Anti-Semitism is prevalent in the district. The right candidate is someone who will vocally and adamantly stand against anti-Semitism, be willing to participate in anti-bias training, and make it a priority to address the existing anti-Semitism within the district. Please be sure to ask each individual where they stand on this issue and what they plan to do to address it. This is, after all, the reason we are all here today in the first place. The right candidate is not someone who is trying to boost their resume or push their personal agenda. The right candidate is someone who has our children in their hearts and on their minds. It must be someone who is willing to make each child in Upper Dublin feel safe, including the Jewish children. Unfortunately, the community has lost a lot of confidence in the board and the district in these last few months. The selection of Ms. Zabarvia's replacements will be the first step to either rebuilding that confidence or destroying it altogether. Thank you.
Hi, Mindy Luce, Fort Washington. I started a petition on Facebook, and I'm going to read it right now. As members of the Upper Dublin community, we, the undersigned, would like to show our support for Ginny Vitella. We believe she is the best applicant to fill the vacant position on the school board. As a graduate of Upper Dublin who chose to raise her own children here, There is no one who has shown as much dedication and investment in our community as Ginny. Her commitment to education and her passion for our town are unparalleled. It is with this conviction that we urge the Upper Dublin School Board to strongly consider Ginny Vitella for their vacant spot. Ginny's dedication is not just evident in her words, but also in her actions. She has consistently been involved in local events and initiatives that aim at improving our schools and has volunteered countless hours. Her understanding of educational needs, coupled with her deep-rooted love for this community, makes her an ideal candidate. We need someone like Ginny who will prioritize students' needs over everything else. We need someone who understands what it means to be part of this community because they live it every day. That was the petition that I started 4 days ago. And right now, there's over 400 signatures on that petition in 4 days. So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does.
Good evening, Julia Watt, Fort Washington. I have 3 students in Upper Dublin, 2 high schoolers, 1 at Fort Washington, been a resident here for 12 years. I'm here tonight to speak on support in behalf of my friend and fellow Upper Dublin parent, Ginny Chiara Vitella. I'm one of the many residents who are in support of Ginny to be selected to sit on this Upper Dublin School Board. In 2019, Ginny ran for school board with several other Upper Dublin parents, and yes, they were on a nonpartisan side, as school boards should be, rather than dividing with D's and R's. It was nonpartisan, a group of parents together. Ginny had the highest number of votes. 4,242 residents voted for her to be sitting on our school board. Over 4,000 residents. She had 47% of the vote that year. In 2021, Ginny ran again and again received an outstanding number of votes with 3,757, 42% of the vote. If these numbers alone don't prove that Ginny is the person to sit on the board, then let me share with you some of the comments of the residents who have signed the petition that Mindy just spoke about. There isn't anyone more dedicated to UD than Ginny. Ginny has shown her unwavering dedication for Upper Dublin, its parents, students, and teachers through her many hours of volunteering over the past 12 years in the school district and advocacy for the students. I feel Ginny could be a fair, impartial voice for our community. She has demonstrated that she truly cares for her community, brings experience, professionalism, and advocacy for our students. Ginny has been a tireless advocate for schools and communities. She's the most well-informed. Her passion and love for our township is a lifelong undertaking, and I don't know of anyone more deserving to sit on the board, do the unexpected, surprise the establishment, and appoint someone not from the establishment. Others say, show the community what true transparency is. Something we all know Upper Dublin needs and has been fighting for so long. This is way overdue. I've had the privilege of volunteering with Ginny alongside many ways. Years at Big Strides, at Fort Washington, something she ran and spent and gave her heart to. Very instrumental in saving our beloved Fort Washington Swim Club, saving that from development that is now a thriving community. I sat on the PTA board with Ginny at Sandy Run. She dedicated so much time, and the teachers, everyone, are just grateful for her. In addition to that, we have fought saving for, we saved the Field of Dreams, which is a highly used field right down the street from here, saving open space together. We saved second recess from elementary schools back in the day. Just advocating, Ginny's been advocating for long-term planned spending. I'm not good with my financial, I'm a speech pathologist, so I don't know numbers, but she's always up here with the numbers and asking for the long-term plan. So directing Fort Washington school play, fifth grade flag football. I mean, the list just goes on. She would step up when something was going to be shut down. So you know of all of Ginny's accomplishments. She is the most qualified. And I just ask you, as we in Upper Dublin are boasting our diversity and inclusiveness, we sit here as a school board, and it's all Upper Dublin Democrats. We need diversity. We need other people. So I'm just really hoping that Upper Dublin School District truly can be one that wants inclusion, respects other people's opinion, and relishes in diverse thinking and allows to think outside the box. So please vote for Ginny tonight. Thank you.
Jen Chaffetz from Upper Dublin. I don't have any prepared remarks. I just want to show something. That represents just about how many people Mindy's petition garnered in 4 days. That speaks to how much support Ginny has in our community. I didn't come at the very beginning of the meeting, so it might be that I missed some remarks, but I'm not sure that there's another candidate that has as large of a fan base. And it's not because we always agree, but it's because Ginny is the supreme advocate. Whether it's the $26,000 that she raised at Sandy Run Middle School and then fulfilled via wish lists to the teachers in the school, or the second recess that was saved, or the swim club, or a million other things. The truth of the matter is, I know that sometimes the people sitting on this board, because you sit there and we sit here, it feels like we're opposites, but we're not. We're all on the same team. But Ginny has been our leader. Ginny has been the one who comes to every meeting, analyzes every number, statement, comment, and really looks to see that we are being fiscally responsible and that we are thinking big picture about our children and our community. Collectively, we are smarter than anyone individually. But if everyone individually always has the same thought, we will never be smarter than we are today. So I urge the board to please step out of your zone, look at Ginny as someone who will help us be better, who will help us bring more residents, keep more residents, and really show our cardinal pride, and elect Ginny. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sue Dickey. I live in Stewart Creek Farms, and I'm here to support Ginny Caro Vitella. I've voted for her many times, even though I'm a firmly registered Democrat, because I believe that she is a true Upper Dublin advocate. And I have worked for most of my career with kids, adolescents. I did my doctoral dissertation on ethico-legal aspects of adolescent health care. I understand kids very well, started out working at Children's Hospital. I think she understands children very well. And I haven't heard anyone mention yet, but when the tornado of Hurricane Ida ripped through our community and touched down right here on our school, where my daughter graduated in 2015, she came to Stewart Creek and helped us out, and among many others from Upper Dublin as well. I think I support her wholly, and I hope all of you guys who are sitting here do as well. Thank you.
Hi, Barbara Mass, Fort Washington. Also Upper Dublin High School math teacher. I wasn't planning to speak, but then we mentioned one thing, and I just want to say on a personal level, as someone who was at over 300 homes during the tornado and helping families, Ginny fed us often, and also many other people did too, but she was so amazing. And it's an emotional experience when anyone talks about the tornado at all. And I just want to remind you of this one time. It was across from Stan Weinstein's house. It was Justin Echeverria's house. And we wound up, a company came with tractors. We were at Stewart Creek, and then we got to Justin's house, and we had literally, it was before a board vote. There was Democrats and Republicans, and everyone was handing each other branches, and that's a great example of people working together, whatever party they are. I may be the only Republican other than Ginny in here, and I'd love to be represented that way, but it doesn't matter. I just want to remind you that it can happen, and I look forward to whoever comes in, great candidates. I just know Ginny more because she's everywhere. She's been doing everything. She gave my kids tours of the high school and middle school, or her child did. So, I mean, she's just in it. But again, everybody seems great. But as soon as you mentioned the tornado, I had to say it. There were so many times. So thank you. Bye.
Hi, my name's Heather Crosby. I live in the Orland section of the township. I don't know how to follow anything related to the tornado because obviously that's such an incredibly emotional issue, so I don't know how to follow that. I do just want to say I don't know any of the candidates personally. I don't have any proverbial kind of skin in the game. I just want to talk about what's important to me as a parent and a resident of the township. I am an empath by nature and an HR professional by trade, and inclusion and diversity are sort of what I've built my life's work on. So it's really important that we have somebody that is representative of all of the students in the district, whether it be rallying against anti-Semitic remarks scribbled on a bathroom wall, or against LGBTQ kids being bullied at school and on the bus ride home, or even from a safety perspective in regards to the fight that happened at the high school last week, making sure that we're doing what we can to protect, I think it was the principal in the video I saw who took a hit to the face trying to break it up while a security guard stood by. I really am looking forward to the questions that you guys are going to ask, and I'm hoping that there's some challenging and informative questions that let us get to know the candidates so that we can really get a sense of who is going to best be able to serve the district. So thank you for your time.
Hello, Ted Fricker, Drescher, PA. I'm a lifelong resident of Upper Dublin, also a alum of Upper Dublin, and am impressed with the turnout tonight that you are getting for this position. I think it shows you the community we live in when you see, 6 people applied, 5 people are here to go before this and explain to you why they feel they should be on this board. And I think it's a huge responsibility for the folks sitting up here for you, and we appreciate everything you do. I don't want to belittle that, but I imagine it's going to be pretty tough to sit here. That's one of the reasons I don't put my name in, because I don't want to sit there too. So, but I want to thank you for putting this time in. I want to thank the candidates, but I'm sure they're all very qualified people, and I appreciate each of them applying for this position. I think it means a lot to me as a community member to know that people do care about this community enough. I've been here my whole life, as I said. I care about this community, but I do know one person, Ginny Vitella, who's applying, and I can't say enough about her. Something we haven't mentioned, I feel like we're trying to hit everything here. She was on the Sandy Run Committee, and I valued her opinion because it was different than everybody else's. And I think sometimes the community needs to hear something different to make sure we're making the right decision. We have a new middle school. It happened. We understand that. But it was good to hear there was a different voice. And I think that's important to understand. Like we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, I think it's important to hear everyone's voice and to make sure we're making the right decision. The right decision isn't the one decision. It's maybe a combination of many. But I think it's important when you understand that the people who do this have to understand what goes into that. And I think I heard Mr. Wallach say that there's an opening on the Finance Committee. Well, a CPA would probably be a good pick to put on that because they may be able to help you add insight to things that you may not understand. So I think it's important when we're considering this position, we look to make sure we have all the strengths we need as a board to make the best decisions. And I think everyone, I'm sure, is very qualified, but I know that I'm embarrassed to say I've only attended a few meetings, but every time I come, I see a certain few people here. Jenny's certainly one of them. Whenever I have questions about the school district or how the policy works, I go to her because I know you folks are busy, and I apologize, but she knows it inside and out. It's impressive to me. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of her. I mean, her knowledge of the district, I mean, living here lifelong, I get it too. Trust me, I'm in the same boat she's in, but, oh, it's moving. I just hope you consider all the facts everyone's telling you tonight. I think it's so important to understand, and I'm a registered Democrat too, but you got to understand that important voice is needed sometimes on this board. I think that it's good to hear everything, and I think it's good for everyone to say about how important all the things she does for the district are. I mean, everyone can go in the PTOs and everything else. It's an impressive fact, a fact pattern that she's been so involved in this district, and I think she'd be an asset to the board, and I hope you consider her. Thank you.
Hi, Gail Miller from Drescher, Pennsylvania. Everybody has brought up how amazing Ginny is. The one thing that nobody brought up is she has been to more meetings than each and every one of you that are currently on the board. Think about that. She has been to more meetings in her stay than all of you combined, with the amount of time and energy between being a resident her entire life and the fact that she gives back, not just to her school, Fort Washington, not just to Sandy Run, not just to the high school, but to everyone and everything her heart she pours into. If that's not enough to elect Ginny Vitella, I don't know what is.
Just trying to make it taller. Caitlin Johnson, Ambler. I wasn't initially going to come. I just wanted to be present for Ginny because she is just so kind and so compassionate. And then as I was sitting there, I was like, I have a Ginny story too. So 4.5 years ago, there was contemplation about not building a planetarium for the Sandy Run. And I'd heard about it and I was like, I don't know, I was like 8 months pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta go. We have to have the planetarium. And when I came, she was such a welcoming face. And it made me feel comfortable coming up and saying why I was there and why it was so important to me. And years later, the planetarium does stand and my kids get to go and it's fabulous and I'm so glad. And every time I come to a meeting, I know there's someone that's gonna sit there and smile and say hi. Like it's just so interesting. And then the other, I guess, what was it? Last year, the senior up all night after prom, I heard they needed people and I was like, I don't know, my kids are only in Fort Washington. I have 4 small boys. I don't know if I should go. And then someone had said, oh, they need someone. So he's like, you know what else am I doing at 3 a.m.? I go, and who is sitting right there in the door when I open it? Ginny. And I'm like, oh, this will be fine. Ginny's here. So I just think it's such a testament to who she is in the community that all of us have Ginny stories about how she made us feel welcome, how she made us feel empowered and inspired and able to speak our voice when we really weren't sure if we were going to be strong enough to do it ourselves. And I am sure that everyone that sits in these chairs are qualified and are fabulous. And I just don't have as much to share about them because I just don't really know them. But obviously we'll all be open to getting to know whoever's new, but I also think that she is really a person we should consider seriously because of who she is and who she has shown herself to be over all these years. And I like her, of course, because she graduated from Fort Washington like me, but I think there's so many things about her character that are admirable. So thank you.
Jason Zaroff, Drescher, and I'm probably the least qualified person in the room to speak, but I'm going to do it anyway. And the reason why is not because of the few meetings I've only attended in this past year, but because there's one person in this room who's probably done more work than more people combined in this entire room, and probably also because we've all secretly been taking advantage of this person, and that's Ginny Vitella. Let's be honest, I know I'm echoing a lot of everybody else in the room, but the truth is, I can't even go in the laundry list of stuff that she's been doing. Go ahead and look up on the website. There's tons of stuff on there. I could go over 4 minutes into explaining that. You've already heard a good portion from everybody else in the community as it is. Quite frankly, I don't know where you get your ambition because you're still doing this after multiple attempts and after multiple attempts of people turning their head. You deserve this more than anybody. Quite frankly, I don't want to see someone else follow the views of someone who previously left this fine group here. I mean, I saw what happened with Colonial. And one person resigned and they got someone who shared the same views as that person. It was almost like, what's the purpose and what's the use? I only know Ginny from just the past couple of conversations, but I can tell by her nature she's nothing like that. And I think you'd be doing an incredible disservice to the community if you considered somebody else. Thank you.
Jen Kuznets, Upper Dublin, Fort Washington. Lifelong Democrat, called wrong-headed Democrat by the people who endorsed all of you up here simply because I questioned the board and had different viewpoints on certain things, and ran with Ginny a couple of election cycles ago. We're here because the Upper Dublin Democratic Committee didn't consider the Jewish community when they endorsed a candidate for the school board. We all know whoever gets endorsed wins the election. It just is what it is. The school board is making the DEI movement a top priority, as it should be. Who doesn't want diversity, equity, and inclusion? But what does that exactly mean to you? Diversity is defined as the condition of having or being composed of differing elements. It's variety. But what about, when we talk about appearance, we talk about race, gender, those kinds of things, right? But what about diversity of thought? How can we grow if we are within an echo chamber? What about diversity of ability? Do any of you have financial expertise? We certainly have plenty of board members with educational backgrounds, but since the board does not teach in our classrooms or write curriculum, I'm having difficulty understanding why that makes one of you more qualified than any other. When we talk about equity, what exactly do you mean? There are certain communities that definitely are at the forefront of our commitment to equity, but there are many who have had to struggle still, the Jewish community being one of them. We could talk about our special needs students. I wouldn't say that they're having an equitable experience here in Upper Dublin. There are only 2 lift buses in the entire district. So students who need a lift bus have to wait far longer at school in order to get a ride home, getting home much later than most other students in the entire district. They're shuffled between substitute aides who are hardly equipped with the proper training because the pay is so low. We can't fill those positions with full-time employees. In order to save money, the district created the MDS room because it was cheaper to have students there than with the MCIU, which is where they should be. Some of them should definitely be there and would benefit from the help. Certain groups of students are coddled while others are completely overlooked. If we're talking about equity, then let's really talk about equity. Inclusion, the act of including someone or something as part of a group. I think we all know, as I sit here watching the show unfold, knowing that you have no intention of voting for a certain candidate based off of her political affiliation. We've seen it time and time again. She has systematically been shut out from contributing on a deeper level. We all know her dedication to this community and her knowledge of the school district is unmatched. Yet simply because of her political affiliation, you choose to exclude her. And that doesn't sound very inclusive to me. I look around the room and I see many members of the Upper Dublin Democratic Committee here today. They typically only show up for votes like this or appointments like this or union negotiations. It's always political when certain people show up in our audiences at these school board meetings. I'm asking you to break free of the political nonsense that has handcuffed our district for years. There's more to our community than that. As a board member, you're charged with representing all taxpayers and families here in Upper Dublin. You need to do what is right for our community and not just for those who endorse you. Thank you.
My name's Anne-Marie Stockbauer. I've been a resident for 32 years. I have 2 children that went through the school, and I am a happily retired Upper Dublin School District teacher. And I see Ginny everywhere, whether it's a concert at the school. I'm in the, I'm sorry, I'm all like flustered here. She's trying to recruit helpers for the post-prom. She is everywhere. And with such a big heart, with all of her intentions for the best of the community, for the taxpayers, for the students. As a teacher, I knew her. I like to try to get to know her because she ran a wonderful program for our students called Big Strides. I don't know if that's come up tonight, where she would encourage the students to come out and run a few laps, and they would get a stamp. And the work she put into this program, calculating who ran around the field the most times, what classroom had the most, like, I can't imagine the hours she put into it. It meant the world to the children. But this is a little piece of Ginny. The last township meeting I went to, she was there. She knows so much about the school district, the township, and it's because she cares and she has a lot to offer. And I really hope and pray that you consider her to be your next school board member. I think to work with her instead of fear her getting up to the microphone will do our school district so well. So please consider the person that just puts in all the time, energy. She really is a good person who has the district and the township their finest hope for them. So let's give her the support she needs. Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me, I do not see anyone else approaching the microphone, so we will close public participation. I will note that we have received 12 written comments that were dispersed to the board and that the board has read in advance of this meeting. Are there any comments from the board before we get into the interview process?
There's just one particular thing I want to respond to. There was an assumption by several comments included an assumption that we, and I really can only speak for myself here, that I will make a decision based on political affiliation, and that is hogwash. First of all, I don't know the political affiliation of most of the people who are going to be sitting up there. And I have never based any decision based on that. There seems to be an assumption that the Upper Dublin Democrats are pulling strings. They did endorse me in 3 elections, but never once in 10 years, never once has anyone from the Upper Dublin Democrats ever approached me about a vote, ever. And I assume that's true for the rest of the district. So all that belief that's what's driving any of this is just utter hogwash. I'm going to be open-minded about this, hear all 5 candidates, and vote for the one who I believe will be the most effective for our community. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sirota. Anyone else? I'll just add, there was a comment about taking this matter seriously and taking all candidates seriously. And I think you can tell from us being here tonight in this process just how seriously, I can speak for the entire board, that we do take this and how seriously we are going to consider each of the applicants who put themselves out there tonight in this form and this format. I'm looking around. Any comments for anyone on Zoom before we move on? Not looking like it? Okay. So we're going to move into the school director interview process now, which I described earlier. If I could ask all 5 of the candidates to come up. We have a table here for you. Letter A is on your left, my right, and we'll go A to E that way. welcome everyone. Deep breath. So we're going to get rolling now. And what I'd like to say is that, this is going to be interactive essentially between us and the five of you. Everybody in the audience, we appreciate obviously all of your comments. We appreciate you being here tonight, but allow us this opportunity to get to know all five of the candidates before us, and obviously you will as well. I apologize that their backs are to you, but we kind of want to see their faces and their reactions and get to know them so that we can move forward. I think with that, I just want to again say to all five of you now that you're up here and I'm looking at you, thank you. Thank you for applying for this position. It takes a lot to put yourself in this position. We appreciate all of you stepping up and coming to see us this evening. And like I said, we can only pick one, and we're going to do our best to do that this evening. But please, there's a zillion opportunities to be involved in the school district. Don't let this be the last time that we see you on behalf of the district, because there's always opportunities, and participation in numerous ways, forms, and fashions is always encouraged. Okay. With that, as I said, we're going to start a panel interview process. I have the privilege of asking the first question, and candidate A, Mrs. Shanak, did I get that? Shanak. Shanak? Okay. Yeah, so the way we work these microphones is there's a little button down the bottom that's red, and if you press that, it'll turn green. Perfect. Since we'll be talking one at a time, we could probably just leave it on and we could pass it to Ms. Barnes when we get to that, and then it looks like there's one to share on that side, so we'll keep things moving that way. Everybody ready around the board table? Wait, I need my notepad. Hang on a second. We good, everybody? Awesome. All right. Question number one. What is your understanding of the roles and responsibilities of the school board and that of the district's administration? Please include where an individual school board member fits in the chain of command in the district. Make sure you get the microphone close so we can hear. Yeah.
So when I filled out my application, this question was included, and I took that as an opportunity to learn exactly what, like, the time commitment, the roles, what was expected, what sort of committees you serve on, and I answered in a very technical way that you guys have all had a chance to read. So in addition to that, being one of 9 that works with the superintendent, no one person really has any true power except for collaborating and participating in the discussion to get to the best solution. But in the past few days since hearing about this meeting and being able to participate, I've really given this a lot more thought, and listening to community input as well, or the public input. And I really would also add, I wouldn't say switch gears, but add that really the biggest, the role is to give the kids in our district the tools to become successful adults, right? So the parents, the teachers, the support staff, the board, to model and lead and give these students, kids in our community, the tools to become adults and solve problems. So whether that means have healthy personal relationships, whether that means be successful in your career, whether that means help on a larger scale, serve in your community, solve big problems. If we put out the best crop of problem solvers ever, that would be a huge success. And I think it covers so many scopes. That's what I think our role is, to do the best we can to push in that direction.
Thank you.
Hi. So I think the role of a board director is to represent the community, to be open-minded, to listen to all of the input, all of the facts, all of the opinions, and then to make the best decision about what the policies going forward might be. It's a role that has a huge time commitment. I am aware of that. And I think that having an open mind is probably one of the most important characteristics of a board member, and to be able to listen for understanding when anyone is speaking, whether it's members of the community or among ourselves as members of the board, so that we can make decisions that will result in the best outcomes for all of our students in the district. And that should be the primary concern for everyone that is involved in the school board.
Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. So I think at the individual board member level, the most important thing that we can do is serve as a listener to the community. So listen to members of the community, but not just listen, but to understand the needs and the wishes of the community. And as I applied for this position and word started getting out, I was really impressed and surprised, frankly, at how many people called me and texted me and emailed me and shared their thoughts and their beliefs and what they hope to see from the board. Because many of them felt like they didn't have an opportunity to share those thoughts, or that they had, and maybe that they hadn't been heard and listened. And so I think that's, at the individual board member level, one of the most important roles that any of us would play. And then you bring those findings, those ideas, those suggestions, those recommendations, those concerns to the collective body of the board, and because you represent the community. And the board carries out the wishes of the community in terms of providing the best educational experience that we possibly can. And then between the board and the administration, well, the board serves as a bridge. The board is the voice of the community and works closely with the administration and helps carry forward what the community would like to see in terms of educational experience. And so I find that it was a really fascinating process to hear from people I'd heard from in some time, and some people that I heard from quite often, and how invested they were in the educational experience of the community. And I think that's incumbent on any board member to continue that listening posture as they move forward.
I was about to start. Hi, Jenny Vitella Ambler. I just want to start really honestly. I am overwhelmed with the support that I had here on that petition. And really, I have 2,000 followers on a community Facebook page that I've communicated with the community for many, many years. Obviously, you know, you come to meetings. I volunteer extensively in all these schools. All the stuff was amazing. And I want to thank everybody who has supported me through these processes and over these years. And it's touching to know how many people that I've touched just by trying to do the right thing. Obviously, listening, I think that is probably one of my better skills. I do absolutely listen to what people say, regardless. I mean, there's people from all different ages, all different locations, all the different, so many different diverse groups of people come to me, ask me questions, ask what they can do, where I can go to help. So that's on the personal level, and I'm sorry for taking that time. I just thought it was really important to thank everybody that was here. The school board is technically, you know, we follow the guidelines of the PSBA, right? We commit as a school board member to lead responsibly, act ethically, plan thoughtfully, evaluate continuously, communicate clearly, advocate earnestly, and govern effectively. We do policy making, we hire the superintendent, we approve budgets, we approve curriculums, we assess compliance with policy standards. We are definitely different than the administrative. We are their leader, the board that helps them. We get the people in place to do the work. Some of them are here this evening from finance, curriculum, special education. And it's really important to have good people around you and be supportive of them. We also have to make sure that we are educating all our children. We have a couple policies that really dictate what we should do and should be following. Policy 103.1 really outlines that we are to ensure that equitable opportunities are provided to all students. We have to provide equitable opportunities for all students to achieve their maximum potential through programs offered in the schools regardless, and I won't list the laundry list of things that we do. It's for all children regardless, okay? All children need to feel safe And that is part of our policy. We've passed a year ago, Policy 827, which is about educational equity, allocation of resources and opportunities and treatment of students. And I believe wholeheartedly in all of that. It's a very important role of the school board.
Thank you for having us here today. I'm Joan Frizzell, Stewart Creek Farm, and as some of you know, had to deal with the tornado, and many people who are here in this audience were part of helping all of us. When I look at a school board and think of a school board, I think their role is related to quality improvement of education. I think they need to work together to collaborate with all of the stakeholders, and the stakeholders include the administration, the faculty, don't forget the staff, the bus drivers, which, by the way, I think bus drivers are like one of your first line of defense with students, as they know the kids on their bus, they know if something's different at the home or that the child's getting on the bus differently. The students and anybody that works with the students, the lunchroom ladies, the cleaning ladies, or the cleaning staff, I should say, and the lunchroom staff. Those are all people that the school board needs to look at, to interact with, and collaborate with to give the students the best experience. And when I think of an educational experience, I not only think of what we are giving them in terms of knowledge, building on their intellectual abilities, but I also think we have to look at what is the emotional level of our students. If a student's been bullied or a student doesn't feel safe in the school, they're not going to devote their attention to learning. And I think the school board is collaborating with all those areas to provide the best that they can for students.
Thank you, each of you, for those responses to that question. We are now going to keep moving to question number 2. We'll start with Ms. Barnes this time, and I'm going to pass the microphone to Mr. Warschauer.
Thank you. The question is, school boards across the nation are navigating tensions in their communities. How would you navigate multiple perspectives, and as a school board member ensure that all community members feel valued and heard?
That is a very good question.
Please use the microphone, Ms. Barnes, just so we can hear you. Yes.
That is a very good question, and one that is difficult to answer, I think. I think as board of directors, as members of the community, just being open to other viewpoints, listening to what other people have to say, not inserting your own agenda when you are listening, and promoting policies that make everyone in the community, and most importantly our students, because that's who we're here for right now, feel valued, feel respected, and feel that they belong. So I think that as a group, it's critical to convey those feelings in every aspect of every decision that is made as part of this group, and in the school as well. Hopefully that would be the case too.
For many years, I served on the Millersville University Alumni Association Board of Directors, including a 2-year term as president. And during my term, my platform was around building a bigger tent. I said, as many alumni as we can get involved, the better. But that means every alumni needs to see themselves in the Alumni Association. And I had some colleagues, some members of my own board that came to me and said, I don't feel like I have a home here. I don't feel like my voice is being heard. And that's not okay, because we're all about inclusion. Everyone has a home, not just with Millersville, but everyone has a home here in Upper Dublin. And so How do you do that? Well, there's ways you can create those sort of opportunities for people's voices to be heard. But it's not just about hearing somebody's voice, it's about understanding them. It's about understanding where are they coming from. And so what I did with Millersville is I set up a series of meetings. So come talk to me, let's have a conversation. I want to hear your perspective, but let me understand it. And so let me try to mirror back what I think I hear you saying. And am I getting this right? And if I'm not, help me get it right. And so we were able to build a bigger tent at Millersville. We were able to get more alumni engaged than we ever had before. And I think we do that here as well. I think there's ways that we can set up town hall meetings outside of this business meeting. Look how many people came out tonight to share their opinions. But think about how many people would come out on a regular basis if we could have ongoing conversations and dialogues when there's not something like a vote on the table where it feels very high pressure and high stakes. How do we lower the stakes and how do we lower the temperature in the room so we can sit around a table like this and all look at each other and have a conversation about what's best for our community? Upper Dublin is everyone's home. Everyone in this room, everyone watching online, everyone watching this recording later, you have a home here. You're part of this, and I want to do my part to make sure you feel included.
I agree with that 100%. I think that open dialogue, feeling comfortable, feeling safe. I've advocated for a long time for town hall meetings, especially when it's hot topic issues, especially if it's a lot of money. And I want a place where the community can feel they can speak and feel comfortable without repercussions. I feel like there's a lot of times that people are nervous to get up and speak, beyond the public speaking nervousness, right? And that is something I think Upper Dublin can work on, and probably most districts can work on. I have lived here, as you know, all my life. So I know a lot of people in Upper Dublin. I listen to them, and many of them, some of them spoke tonight, appreciate that I am listening to them. Now, can I affect change and help them 110%? Not always, not necessarily, but they know that I'm listening and that I'm going to try my best to listen. And so when you have a hot topic issue where there's tensions, you really have to make sure there's a safe space for people to speak. You have to be open, you have to be honest, you have to be transparent. You have to reach out to the community. Like you said, you need to offer meetings or town hall meetings, and I mean meetings like one-on-one meetings. I had already, someone on Facebook said, if you get on this board, I'd like to talk to you about this. And I love that. And I've done that with other people throughout the 10 years, because it's like when something comes up, they don't know where to turn. And because I've been so involved in the schools, now with a student in the schools for 14 years, he's a freshman in college, just left tonight. And it is overwhelming to some people because they don't know where to turn. They don't know the processes. And I think it's really important to make sure that you are that person that can listen to them, tell them where to go, who will listen, and if that fails, where they can go next. I also, one very important thing is to meet with teachers and staff. Joan alluded to that in her response in the first question. I feel like there's teachers and staff have things that they could say, but may not feel comfortable saying it. It takes a lot to come up and speak in one of these meetings, but if they felt comfortable that they could say what's working, what's not working, what kind of conflicts they're dealing with in their classrooms or in the buildings. And I think that's really important to make sure that they have a safe space as well to speak. Thanks.
I have to say, a lot of people said some of the things that I was going to say, but I also can say that personally, professionally, I grew up in North Philly. I went to all North Philly schools. I had the opportunity to be very active in the Alumni Association of the Philadelphia High School for Girls. We use that as a listening board for students, for faculty, for staff. We did a lot to make a difference for the girls in that school. I also, as a nursing supervisor, had to be involved in various situations, some of which kept me up at night. But I always think it's important to listen, to understand, and to provide avenues for communication. I think parents need to feel like they're part of the board, not that they're sitting in your seat, but they have a way to communicate with you. I think the students need to have a way to interact and communicate with you, and the various staff members, that there needs to be, as Ginny mentioned, town halls, or maybe town halls is not the right term, but a way that, we have an open door policy. A way that people can say, this is what could conceivably make a difference for these children. And they're children. They need to be cherished, they need to be educated, and they have parents that want the best for their kids. And I think as board members, when it comes to controversies, board members need to be able to understand and develop a way to make sure these kids are getting what they need.
I was going to say that's like the question of the day, the question of the year. It's really the question of the millennium, right? This is a big question in any aspect of society. So I would kind of draw from my experiences at work. So I'm a physical therapist. I know most people don't know me. I have 20 years of clinical practice as a physical therapist. I work close by in Jenkintown. We draw patients from North Philly, Jenkintown, Elkins Park, all the way up through Abington and other places as well. I also manage my clinic, so I have patient needs, I have staff needs, I report to people in administration, they have needs. So I've had a lot of practice in balancing competing needs, and I think that one of the, it's a very big parallel to balancing student needs, staff needs, support staff needs, parents need, community needs. So while I may not have some of the other experiences some of the other folks have had, I have different life experience that I feel are fairly applicable. And one of the biggest things I would point to is the effort and attempt and really the need to understand the why, behind why, and just as importantly, understanding the why not. And then finding some middle ground, less about why one is right and one is wrong, but about the things that actually could satisfy some of what both groups or both ends of whatever the issue is need, so it doesn't become win-lose, it becomes some portion of win-win for everyone involved. I would just look to apply those skills to the community, school board, school district, and the kids.
Thank you all for those responses. Next, we'll move to question number 3, and Ms. Iannidi's up. And just before we go, Mr. Held, we're going to start with you this time.
Great, thank you.
A point of pride for the district and this board is our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have taken a variety of steps in recent years, but recognize that continual growth is needed. What is the role of the school board and that of an individual board member in continuing to move this forward?
Thank you for that question. I think it really goes back to the listening posture and hearing from members of the community. And that's the approach that I took as I was preparing for this evening. And so I actually spoke with one of my neighbors. She is an educator in a different district. And I asked her what is on her mind. And amongst the many things she shared with me, one is around diversity of our educational staff. So to ensure that the faculty, the educators, the teachers in the classroom, they're representative of the community that we're serving. And she gave an example of a young Black woman in her one of her classes who's excelling at science, just really doing well. And she told her that. She said, I think you could be a scientist when you grow up. And that young student now goes around and tells all of her friends, my teacher said I can be a scientist. She always could. She always could. She had the skill set. She had the knowledge. She certainly could do it. She needed the confidence. She needed somebody that looked like her to tell her, you can do this. You can be whatever you want to be. I think we need to think about creating opportunities like that within our district. And so, there's not many, when I was growing up, there are not many male elementary school teachers. But I remember the 2 I had because they looked like me. They were out there on the playground with us throwing the football around. And so they were kind of cool to hang out with, right? You wanted to be with Mr. So-and-so. But then you go in the classroom and all of a sudden you realize, oh gosh, this guy tricked me into learning math. okay? Because he's really good, but he's a really good educator as well. And so I think ensuring that we're hearing from the community, that we're understanding the needs of our students, and that we're reflecting it in terms of how do we allocate our resources. How we allocate resources in terms of staffing and budgets says everything about who we are as a community. And so I think it's incumbent on us to put our resources where the community believes that we should. And I think in terms of DEI efforts, absolutely, we 100% should be about inclusion. Inclusion, inclusion, inclusion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. And I want to give a shout out to Jen Inetti, actually, who has done a great job at promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and throughout our district for many years, starting back in Fort Washington Elementary School. And I know you've made, we've talked about things on how we can always do better, right? We can always make, when you might not necessarily think, oh, that might be exclusive of somebody, but if you drill down, you think about it, talk to other people, well, hey, actually that might be, and maybe we can try a different tact. And I think that's really important, and I think that's good growth. I think this is a place where we can constantly grow and get better. We passed some policies in the spring. We passed, like I said, a year ago, a policy that makes sure that we are defining that every child deserves a quality education. They need to feel safe. They need to feel like they belong. And it does, regardless, again, I will say regardless, every single child we have, and every person really in this school district. And I know that we've done great work with our equity groups. I think we can do more. I think they actually themselves could be more inclusive. I know several of them throw great events that are wonderful to attend and, express their culture or their food or their music or whatever. And I think these are great events for our community. So we have a way to bond at these events. I know that there's been a belonging survey that the children, I believe, I'm going to say 7th through 12th, but I could be wrong on that. Someone can refresh my memory. That there's a belonging survey, and we find that, some of the responses were what we expected. Maybe a female might feel like they don't belong in 9th and 10th grade. They come around and feel more belonging in 11th grade or 12th or whatever. So I think there's always growth here. I think this is a good place to have open conversations because not everybody, I don't know what everybody else feels, right? I know my perspective and through my eyes, but I don't necessarily see through everybody else's lens. So this is a great place to have meetings, have open conversations with all people, with all backgrounds, and learn about different things that they are struggling with or where their children aren't feeling safe or included. And I think that's it, open and constant help.
I would certainly have to say that I agree with the other two people in terms of some of their approaches, but one of the things I've learned from 30 plus years of teaching in a university is that children, students, individuals learn differently. We have visual learners, we have learners that have to be more hands-on. And when I think of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think we need to address the different ways that students learn. One teacher might be very good for one group of students, but maybe not good for another student that learns differently. And that teacher should not be castigated because maybe the student's not doing well in her room, but would do better in his room. So that students learn differently. So when I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, in addition to looking at different backgrounds, I may be the only one here that grew up in beautiful downtown North Philly, as I say, but and continued to work in beautiful downtown North Philly for most of my career. But, that's my background difference. Ginny, totally Upper Dublin, but yet we can communicate and share. So it's not just background, religion, whatever, it's also these students learn differently. So we need to provide background and information to help them learn what's best. I also have noticed that when the library was across the street from the high school. If you went to the library when school let out, there were large numbers of students working in the library, doing what was best for them, interacting with librarians for support. When I go to the library, which is now in the office park, the number of students is very low after school. And yet that was an opportunity for students who learned differently to have a way to interact and to get additional support and help. That I do wonder how we can make up for that lack. Because if a student learns differently, we need to find a way to support them. Thank you.
I think the question asked as an individual and as a board. So as an individual, I would say that the most important thing I can do is model the behavior I would want, treat people how I'd want to be treated. I have a very young son, so a really intense technical explanation. He's only 4. You know, what I say is not as important as what I do. And a lot of the kids, I think all people, learn, you know, to either model or be different than what they see, but their first instinct is to model what they see until they, you know better or know differently, or unfortunately have a negative experience themselves. So there's the old adage that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. If you guys have heard that before, I didn't make it up. I wish I did. But so really just treating people respectfully and being open to the idea that I don't have all the answers and I can't live other folks' experience. So I would want as a board for us to listen to each other, listen to the community. There's a lot of talk about diversity of thought, and I'll admit that I'm not a political insider in this community, and many of you probably don't know me, but it is part of what prompted me to apply, because I do agree that diversity of thought is really the only path forward. These kids are having a very different childhood than any of us. Whoever the youngest parent is, still very different between cell phones, internet, all the things outside of the bubble, so to speak. You know, it's not an impenetrable bubble. So when we look at the policies, which we're charged with looking at them in the context, maybe not when they were written and last reviewed, but of what's going on in society today, the experience of these kids today, and just always looking for opportunities to improve because the circumstance is always changing. One group who is more vulnerable this year, it'll be a different group next year, until hopefully there's no groups, but it's just not the way the world works. So just always evaluating that we are applying principles and values and behaviors to all and fairly, and not preferencing any groups, I think would be the best path forward. As a board and a district.
Well, all amazing comments. So what can I add that's different? Not much. I would say that education is probably one of the key ways to encourage everyone's thoughts towards more diversity, more accepting of diversity, more inclusion, more feeling of belonging. Nobody knows me here either, so I'll just say I am a speech language pathologist. I've worked for the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for a lot of years, like maybe 3 decades or so. And I have worked in a variety of different schools across Montgomery County, more than I could even count or name at this point. And the one thing that I've always looked for when I go into a school is, what is the culture of the school? What is it that that particular school emphasizes as what they believe to be important. So I think that as an individual, we need to know in ourselves what we believe to be important and how to convey that to other people. As a role of the school board, I think supporting policies that promote education, that promote acceptance of different attitudes, whether it's the attitude of the moment or whatever, because as Rachel just said, it is something that is ever changing. And I think that we've all already said that listening to try to understand is the most important way to make everyone feel that they belong and that they're included.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for those responses. About halfway there. Anybody need a drink? Break? We okay? All right. We're going to move to question 4. Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. And we're starting with Ms. Vitella this time, I believe, right? As a school board member, one of the critical responsibilities involves determining the appropriate level of taxation to fund the school district needs. How do you determine if a proposed tax increase is reasonable, taking into consideration the financial impact on the community while still addressing the educational needs and priorities of the school district?
It's amazing that that randomly landed on me because I feel like this is one of my strengths, and I know there's a vacancy on the Finance Committee. It is the greatest challenge, and that's how I answered that question originally, is that we have to balance a fantastic school education with the needs and the costs associated that to run a district. It is the age-old question, right? I think that we must provide an equitable and quality education that meets the needs of all of our students and offer extracurricular opportunities, ensure a safe environment, balance the budget, consider the tax implications of the families. We have to maintain our buildings efficiently, and we have to provide what the teachers and staff need. It's a lot, it's a big ask, right? And we have taxpayers that want lower taxes. We have kids that need the best education possible. We have teachers and staff that want to get compensated for all their hard work and passion. And for our district, we want the best of the best here. And it is a solution. There is no easy answer. It is a year to year. It is months. We talk about the budget for months. It's already been, Andy has already proposed a baseline budget starting in October. And that doesn't get approved and finalized with the tax decision until June. There's a lot of thought that goes in behind that. And what you don't want to do, you don't want to cut programs unless those programs should be cut. So that's another thing. You need to delve deep into what's working and what's not working. Could we implement a different, curriculum? Not in its entirety. Sorry, Mr. Hoffman, I don't want to imply that I come in and change the curriculum. I don't at all. That's his job. But if something's not working, you ask the teachers. This is that kind of the communication with teachers and staff. It's like, what is working, what's not working? What do you need? Where are we wasting money? Where can we find places that we can save money? And that way, if we do our due diligence on where we can stop some waste, better programs for maybe less money, do better with less. If we find those places, then we know with confidence that if we have to raise a tax, that we've done our due diligence to make sure that that was worthy of that tax increase, because we need to now explain to the people. And also, this whole process should be open, transparent, answer any questions, have town hall meetings if people want to come and ask, like, why are we having a 2.5 tax increase when we have $8 million surplus? Just to bring up a more recent conversation we've had at the school board. And you have to be able to answer that. And I think that as a school board member, I would want to know, I would not be able to increase taxes without finding out that we are doing the best possible things or whatever spending that we could do, and we're doing it in the smartest way. And I know one thing that recently came up, we talked about a new softball field at the high school. And yes, we've committed to spend the $750,000 on that, which is a big number, but it's been years. And the question then becomes, do we spend an additional $150? And my philosophy on that is yes, do the job, do it right, don't do it in piecemeal, because I think in the end, we end up maybe not doing the best for our buildings and for our children if we do things in piecemeal, and maybe they become more costly as we wait. So that was a long answer, and I apologize, but something I'm certainly passionate about.
Thank you, Jenny. Those, of course, are probably things that everyone here at the table can agree. If you have a large surplus, moving money into the reserve fund, and we do need a reserve fund for emergencies, but if we're moving large amounts, then how large should the tax increase be? But the budget is not a blank check. The budget means you look at what programs are needed, what you can do to make a difference for the students educationally so that each child can meet their potential. But if you look at the population in Upper Dublin, about 20% are school children, 20% are senior citizens, and then between 20 and 62, 65 is the remaining 40% of the township. So we want to provide the best advantage for each dollar. Each dollar that's spent needs to mean something. We don't want to find out that parents didn't move here because our taxes are too high. But we don't want to find out a parent moved away from here because the child didn't get the educational support that they needed. So that we need to find a balance. It's not a blank check, but we need to find the balance of what's best for the community. You don't want to see senior citizens moving because they can't pay the tax bill. And I was appalled to learn that the state of Pennsylvania only provides support for senior citizens if their income is less than $30,000 a year. And if you look at the mean salary and income in Upper Dublin, the mean of our community is much greater than $30,000 a year. So it's something to think about when we discuss raising taxes. So there has to be a balance. The educational program, and look at the best bang for our buck, which is a colloquial term, I know, but thank you.
So I've mentioned that my training is as a physical therapist. So I work in healthcare, and I've read journal articles and it's heavily evidence-based. I also, as I mentioned, manage my clinic. So there's budget, there's volumes, there's supplies, there's equipment, there's facilities, there's hiring, there's technology. So I've had some practice as well with balancing competing needs again. So I think what I can offer, the approach that I would try to follow, is taking the time to explore innovative solutions and using data-driven or evidence-based examples from other communities or new programs whenever possible, or data to support on continuing a program or discontinuing a program as best we can. Now, I know things aren't black and white like that, but I do think the best we can do to take emotional and subjective topics and put metrics to them can be helpful. They're not the be-all, end-all solution, but it is more of a philosophical approach, not just how do we feel about something, but what is the math, what is the evidence, what does the literature say? And as much as things do get more expensive, advances in new programs, technology, and other things could offer opportunities where some things get cheaper, and taking advantage of those as well. So this is an area that I would be definitely needing to learn about, but it's exciting to me to learn about it and see what creative solutions we can come up with.
This is probably an area that is one of the most difficult for the board to have to deal with. I think that balancing the needs of the students and the district with the taxpayers is something that is, I don't know how you do it, to be honest. So I don't have a lot of experience in managing anybody's budget other than my own, so I would not be someone that would be an expert in this area. I would need to learn a lot, and one thing I can say that I would do is look at all of the evidence, look at all of the numbers, all of the figures. You also have to balance what the state and federal mandates are. There are certain things that you absolutely cannot cut, you cannot make changes to. So being creative, being flexible, and listening to everyone's input would be the way to manage the difficult budget negotiations and to minimize the impact on the taxpayers of our community, because I think everybody's in agreement. Nobody wants taxes to go up. But the reality is prices of everything is going up, as it always will, I'm sure. But, you know, just being able to think outside the box, think of other options, look at all the options, explore what other districts are doing. Those might be ways to help come to some answers.
So I believe where you allocate your financial resources says everything about what you value as a community. And I've been a resident here since 2014. I've seen my own taxes go up 26% in that time. So I get it. But I've also seen a lot of really tremendous improvements in the school district and in the community. And I think a vibrant school district creates a vibrant community. Joan referenced that, you know, there are different residents. Some have students in the school district. Some used to have students in the school district, but they've stayed in Upper Dublin because they find it's their home. It's where they love to live. We have parents that move into the school district like we did before our kids were in school because we knew the outstanding educational experience that we were going to encounter in Upper Dublin. We could have moved anywhere, but we picked here on purpose. We wanted to live in Upper Dublin. So are taxes going to go up again? Well, probably, because the cost of everything goes up. But it's being smart about where we allocate those resources. And there's ways that you can do that. And you do that with long-term planning and being strategic about your investments. So I also serve on the Millersville University Foundation. That's the group that oversees scholarships and endowments at Millersville. And I'm a liaison to the Council of Trustees. And so they set tuition and do things like that. Well, they project how many students are going to be potential enrollees years in advance, and they're able to create draft budgets where they have a sense of what the tuition is going to be so that nobody's surprised when that budget and when that tuition is set. I think we could do that here. We could have draft budgets. We could project what the school enrollment is going to look like. We have the data. We can create data-driven approaches to this. And I think the other important piece of the work is community engagement, so that people can come and not just at a public meeting like this offer comment, but that they can have a dialogue and sit around a table like this where, again, there's no vote being taken, but it's about a conversation. And I've done that work when I was president of the Alumni Association when we were setting our own budgets, and I'd sit around a board meeting and people would get the budget in front of them, and because most people were not financial experts, they, out of fear, would simply vote to pass the budget because they didn't want to seem like they didn't know what they were talking about or ask the right questions. And so we set up a meeting outside of our board meetings where anybody can come ask our treasurer any question they wanted and become better educated about the budgetary process, get insights, because it's not a black box, it's not a mystery. There is a real process behind it, and because of that greater understanding, they knew where we're allocating our financial resources, and the financial resources went to the programming that we could offer. The same thing happens here in Upper Dublin. The financial resources that we have here, they're finite. So how do we make the best use of them as possible? And I think it's being strategic, it's thinking long-term, and it's getting engagement and feedback from everyone in the community.
Excellent. Thank you all again for those responses. Next, we're going to move to question 5. Be Ms. Sherpier's turn, and we're going to start with Ms. Frizzell this time.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Wallach, Ms. Frizzell, you're first, and then we follow around again. In a results-driven environment where swift action and outcomes are often expected, how do you reconcile this dynamic with the responsibilities and role of a school board member? Right?
Well, I would have to say, having been an ER-ICU night shift supervisor, I've had those kind of experiences where X happens and you have to respond quickly. You have to examine every aspect. You have to get the best, you have to get the most data that you can that correctly describes the situation. Think critically to make your decision. On the school board, you have a variety of input from a variety of sources, and you have to sit there and analyze and think of the child. Think of the child and put the child first. Just as a healthcare professional, we think of our patients and put our patients first. You have to think of the child first and what is going to be best for this child. And I saw that the school board made lots of good decisions post-tornado. I stayed at the promenade with 70 other families, and we were talking about the children. And every Upper Dublin child in the promenade, with the exception of those Fort Washington, because Fort Washington was closed, was able to go to their original school. And that if the child couldn't go to Fort Washington and they went to Maple Glen, they quickly made arrangements for those children to be welcomed. So that in dealing with that crisis that happened overnight, they did the best decision they could for the children. And if you put the child first and think of what you need for the child, and I was with 70 other families or 70 other families in the promenade, and every parent spoke about how their child was made to feel welcome, that somebody helped address that child's needs. Because those kids, when they went back to wherever they were going to for school, were scared. I heard a lot about nightmares of children, etc. And I was able to see that the school board thought about the children and tried to do their best for the children. So I think when you look at all of the variables that you just mentioned, Ms. Sherber, that if you put the child first when you're examining all your data, that helps you make the best decision. Thank you.
So I think the question was about getting quick results and how to get that or how to deal with that desire in the community for quick results. And the thing that comes to mind is just to be cautious of chasing the trend of the day or the whatever's popular at the moment, or you'll just be kind of chasing or playing whack-a-mole with different problems. You need to be methodical in approaching complicated questions and have the patience to see proposed solutions through. I think there are probably a lot of lessons some of you with more experience than I would have from past scenarios that would be different but applicable, that you could apply some of the same thinking, and even more importantly, things that maybe could have been handled better and not making those mistakes moving forward. So just looking for commonalities in past experience. When the new next thing comes, there always will be the new next thing. And I think resisting the temptation to get a quick result that's popular versus a slightly longer result that is more meaningful.
Yes, so I think that most of the situations that require a rapid response are hopefully few and far between, but I'm sure there are policies and procedures already in place to deal with those kinds of situations. People do want answers right away, but sometimes you just can't provide them. And I think being transparent with the community, being transparent with the students, whoever it is that the situations involve, can help them to understand that some decisions can't be made quickly, that you have to take the time to look at all of the options, get information needed from a variety of sources, and then make your decision. Not delaying decisions, but just being careful to take the time that's needed.
So professionally, I work as the Senior Director of Communications for a large physician certifying organization, and a lot of my work deals with crisis communications and issues management. And so we're often called upon to respond quickly to an issue that's in front of us. And it comes down to a number of things. One is, in that moment, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be to the community that you serve? And who is the community that you serve? What is your North Star? What are your guiding principles? And if you have those things, that often helps you make a series of decisions that follow. You should also know your audience. And so if we're doing the right things ahead of time, we're listening, we have community engagement, we know what's important to the people that we serve. That really helps us, again, guide our decisions. And then it's about what do we know, what don't we know, and when can we tell people those things? And so even if you're not able to respond in full to whatever the issue is, you can do that transparently, and you can tell people, here's what we know right now, here's when we're going to know more, and here's when we're going to tell you more. And so it's an exercise in transparency. It's an exercise in trying to demonstrate listening, understanding. We hear you, we hear your concerns, we share your concerns, and we're going to get back to you on those things. But to make sure that you're answering things in complete and in full to the extent that you can, when you can. It's an iterative process sometimes, but it really comes and it's really all drawn upon understanding and knowing your community.
That was a great answer. In general, the board on the day-to-day is a slow-moving cog. It just is. And that's good, right? Because we are dealing with a lot of money. We're dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different stakeholders. So the fact that we start talking about the budget that we're going to approve in June, we start talking about it in October. We start talking about a policy. They talk about it in a meeting, it goes to first reading, it gets approved, and then it goes to second reading. It might even go to first reading again and again. It's important because you get a lot of information. There's a lot of great discussion around. More people that want to participate from the community have an opportunity to come participate in those efforts. We go through curriculum. We get presentations from staff about different curriculum. We don't approve, we don't just make a decision on Tuesday to put a new curriculum in on Wednesday. It's a long time. It's a thoughtful, long process. Are there times when we need to be fast? Usually an emergency. A lot of times, the superintendent is the first line of fire on that, I believe. When there's an emergency that comes to in front of the district, the superintendent is the one who has to make a lot of choices, and the board needs to have conversations with our superintendent, make sure we're making right decisions. Transparency, I think, is totally, you need to communicate fast, even if that communication is, we have no information. If you're going to make a statement about something, a well thought out, important statement, if that means drawing on the community that is hurt at that moment. In Joan's example, those were hurt by the tornado. What are they feeling? What are they dealing with? How can we help? What can we do? Most recently, the Jewish community. They felt that the response was delayed. When you're dealing with bullying in the school or graffiti or a fight we just had, some of that communication, I think very many people, the principals are really responsible for that. For the fight, for example, the principal literally, I have no information, but this happened and I want everybody to know. That is so important that we are open, we are honest, we are transparent, and we respond even if our response is we don't know. And other than that, we have to be very thoughtful on everything we decide and everything we discuss so that we are making a collaborative decision and the process is well thought out.
Thank you all again. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to move to our sixth question, but before I throw it over to Ms. Redding, I'm going to ask Mr. Leckman to grab his little basket of letters there, and we're going to randomly pick who goes first for question 6.
E.
E. Okay. Ms. Rizal, we'll start with you, and Ms. Redding, you're up for question 6.
Congratulations on winning the. All right, in all seriousness, question 6 is, being a school board member comes with a level of public visibility and responsibility. In today's digital age, social media plays a significant role in shaping public opinions. How do you navigate social media as a public figure?
I guess I've had to deal with that being a nurse practitioner working in a hospital, as well as being a college faculty member teaching graduate and doctoral students. And my feeling is that social media is where you share social things. I do not believe that it's a place for me to state my political opinion. If you go through my Facebook page, I haven't indicated what my political feelings are. And I think it's important that if there is social media, that it's social. Sharing with friends. My classmates and I are now negotiating on social media about when our next reunion will be. We did use social media very effectively. Since I work in North Philly, I'm a North Philly girl, you may know that Philadelphia Board of Education has eliminated most music and art education in Philly public schools. I'm part of the Girls High Alumni Music Organization, and we deliberately went about fundraising to keep that type of program within the school so we could maintain a school choir, a school orchestra, an after-school art program, a dance program, things that weren't funded by the school board. But we used social media to help get the word out that this was needed. Please support your school. So there are advantages to that. With regard to where people should get their news, it should be from a verified news media source. It shouldn't be from, Happy Harry's, for want of a better term, Happy Harry's news media. You should get your information from ABC, NBC, CBS, BBC, etc. Verified news sources. And as a individual who's out there professionally, personally, I think that politics don't belong on social media. And that as a school board member, you would not see my political opinions. I don't think I've expressed anything politically on Facebook that I can think of. Thank you.
So this is another great question. So I would say as a person, I think the most important thing and anything that represents you is to be authentic and be sure, that you stand by anything you say, post, do, is a good place to start. Anything you would say in front of your grandma, so to speak, anything that you could defend, in front of a mixed audience. And I would say to use it sparingly. It's just a really complicated environment. If I was selected, I'm not a public figure. I work in a public sector, so I'm somewhat aware of what I share or post. But I would certainly apply a heightened level of scrutiny if I was, selected on the board. I don't much now, but I would be even less inclined, to get into back and forths or comments. I probably just wouldn't. Instead, offering like, hey, would you like to get together for coffee, or can I give you a call? Because the online environment is just really hard to navigate, even with the best intentions. So I would definitely say a less is more approach.
For better or worse, social media is a part of our life, and it's not going to go away. I do like using social media as a social tool. I'm a big fan of liking things, but I don't really post too much myself. I think that besides making sure your grandma would approve of it. I think that another question you can always ask yourself when you're posting something or liking something or whatever it may be is, could this hurt anybody in any way? Could it hurt their feelings? Could it hurt their opinion of you? Could it hurt whatever? And I think that using social media sparingly is a good policy, but it is a tool. It is a way of communication now, and being responsible in the way you use it is the most important thing you can do.
When I started in the communications field, I wouldn't find out if somebody said something about my organization for about 2 weeks when I would get a stack of newspaper clips in the mail from across Pennsylvania. You guys remember newspapers and getting them in the mail and things like that? So that's how we found out how people were talking about us and what they were saying. And so no doubt social media has changed the communications landscape incredibly. It's changed all of our lives. I find it's a really helpful resource for listening. It's helpful to find out what's on the minds of community members and to hear their concerns. What I've found, though, is the most effective means of communication remains what we call IRL, which is in real life. And so I can't tell you how many conversations I've already had leading up to this meeting, text conversations, people inviting me into their homes to talk about what's on their mind. They might actually fear putting some of those things on social media because they're worried about how might other people perceive them. I think sometimes, while social media can be really helpful in getting those viewpoints out there, sometimes it leads to divisiveness. And that's unfortunate because we're all in the same community. We're neighbors, we're friends. I like to believe that we all share the same aspirations for our district and that many of us actually like each other quite a bit. But if you look at some of the things that happen on social media, that's not always apparent. I think when we get together in a room, when you see each other at Mondoc, when you're hanging out at the pool together, let's go have a beer together at Brick and Barrel. When you have those kind of conversations, I think they're so important to have that human face-to-face interaction that you might not always get from a social media post that really lacks that tone, that lacks sort of that feedback where you can see somebody leaning into you, really looking in the eye, that they can really understand you. And social media is also oftentimes asynchronous. And so by the time you've put something out there in terms of here's what I believe, and you go walk around the block, take your dog around, you come back and all of a sudden a conversation's played out that you did not anticipate. And sometimes that's not the conversation you intended to have. And so tremendous listening tool, I think really helpful in gaining insights from the community. But I think the best dialogue really happens in settings like this, where we can all get around a table, see each other, know each other, and have effective conversations.
Oh my God, I was about to say Geneva Tell Ambler. Am I so funny? Okay, so social media, you're right. It is a great way to communicate. It is a great place to listen to what's going on. I find out more about what's going on people's, what's happening in the schools, what's happening to the kids, what's happening to the parents, what's happening in the township, what's happening from social media. I'm mostly only on Facebook. I don't do Twitter and Instagram. I'm not really good at them. And obviously I have started this this Facebook page that is a community resource that has over 2,000 followers. Obviously, as a board member, I would have to be more careful and revert back to my team and not post something as a board member that I may have posted as a citizen. Obviously, there is a level of responsibility that goes with that and what I say. I think also it is a great conversation tool because some of the things that I post on that page, for example, would be, what do you think about this? Or this is happening, what are your thoughts? And you get so much information from so many different people. It's fascinating. And actually people that are uncomfortable posting directly on that page would actually reach out to me in an email or reach out to me on an instant message, which is fantastic. And I've spoken to more people on an instant message that they've just seen something I've posted and have more questions about it, but they're afraid to post. Facebook now has an anonymous post, which I think is nice for some of those people that aren't as comfortable asking the question. But I think it's a great way to even communicate to, I don't know if all of you know on Facebook that there is like grade level, class of 2023, class of 2024, 25, 20, all the way down to 30. and posting fundraisers or events or anything like that, or reminder your Florida payment's due tomorrow. These kind of things are fantastic, and it is really important. But of course, sharing your political views or really your opinions is not necessarily appropriate, and certainly not for a school board member, except for if you're answering a question. Someone asks a question, what's happening here? And you can respond on Facebook, in my opinion, that says, this is what's happening, go to this meeting, find out, this is the person to call. It's also where I actually post the minutes to all these meetings. I post not minutes, I'm sorry, the agenda for these meetings. Every meeting, some of them are the least followed of all the posts that go on there, but I still do it. I still copy that agenda, put it on there, put attachments on there, trying to get people engaged in the process, to see what's going on, to have their voice. And I think some of them rely on me to be their voice here because they're intimidated or they are very busy. I know people are very busy. And it's a great tool. I do the township as well. And also fun things. Oh, we're going to have this event, or we're having a recycling event. So the Facebook tool and this community page is what I have been part of for many, many years. And I think it's done a great service to the community. And I've met so many people either indirectly or directly from it. So I think it's very important to be part of that, to listen to what people are saying and to learn what's going on in the district. But you have to be careful with what you post personally.
Okay, thank you again. We have one final closing question, and I'm going to ask Mr. Leckman to reach into his basket again. Drum roll, please.
A.
A. Okay, Ms. Shannock, we'll start with you. Closing question is a little bit open. It is there anything else you would like to share to support your candidacy for this position?
Thank you for that question. So I've spoken a little bit about what I do professionally. The two things I would just like to add is that I would be excited and I'd be, I don't want to say honored, but I'd be appreciative of the opportunity to bring a fresh perspective to the board and get more involved. As I mentioned, my son is only 4, so I have a heavy investment in the next generation of Upper Dublin students. I'll be around for a while. And although I may not have some of the experiences that others on this board have had through their children going through the school yet, that's what I'm about to enter into. In the meantime, I've been very active in other sort of community things and actively involved in my son's preschool, but most folks in this room wouldn't have had those experiences with me. So I just appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you guys for asking these questions and for listening, and everyone in the room really for listening as well.
Yes, thank you, everyone, for listening to our answers. So I would just like to add that I've been a resident of Upper Dublin for about 20 years. My son went to Fort Washington Elementary and graduated the most wonderful year of all, 2020. So, you know, I've been a supporter of our school district. I have nothing negative to say about it. I can honestly say I had a wonderful experience here for all of the years. I think that I would try to bring an open mind to being appointed to this board. I would listen to all sides of whatever issue it is. I would welcome any input from community members, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be speaking with all of you and to answer these questions. Thank you.
So I grew up in nearby Springfield Township, and so I was somewhat familiar with Upper Dublin, but didn't really know the community and really appreciate it as much as I have since my wife and I moved here in 2014. And I can now say we love Upper Dublin. We love it here. And we moved here because of the schools. We made the decision in 2014 when our youngest was about to enter kindergarten where we were going to have him experience his education, and we intentionally picked Upper Dublin. Now, in the fall, we're going to have children in 3 different schools, one at Jarretttown, one at Sandy Run, and don't let this face fool you, but one in the high school. We're going to have a 9th grader. And so I'll have deep insight as to what's happening at each of those 3 buildings, but I can tell you our children have had the best experience. Our 6th grader can't wait to get up in the morning, run down the hill. She's literally the 2nd kid at Sandy Run Middle School every day. She can't wait to get there. Now, our 8th grader is not the 2nd kid there, but, you know, he's also 14, so he does things the way 14-year-olds do them. We love it here. And so I've also tried to find opportunities to give back. I've been a coach for soccer, for middle school, for grade school soccer, as well as baseball and something called quickball, which if you don't know it, it's organized chaos. But across those sports, I've coached 20 seasons of sports. There's no greater joy in the world than being at Mondoc and having some kid run up to you and say, hey, coach, how you doing? Hey, coach, you're going to coach soccer again in the fall? No, you bet I am. I've also recently gotten more involved with the Cub Scouts, so representing PAC 405. We have kids that are from Maple Glen, from Jarretttown, the most energetic group of 2nd graders you'll ever find anywhere. And it's a great joy to watch these young people learn and grow and to be a part of that experience. And so I'm looking for ways to extend what I'm doing in the community to further the way that I can hopefully give back. And to everyone that's here tonight, that's sitting behind us for the last hour or so, thank you for being here. And if I'm the person selected to be here and to represent the community on the board, if I have a seat at this table, you have a seat at this table. If I have a seat at this table, you have a seat at this table.
What else can I offer? I think that the over 15 people that spoke so beautifully about me and what I've done for them and how I touched their lives is amazing and humbling. And again, I want to thank them all for being here and those that signed this petition supporting me. 78 years ago, my grandfather and grandmother moved to Upper Dublin with my 6-year-old father. They lived on Summit Avenue, and my grandfather bought like 9 acres of land by Fort Washington, by 309 and Farm Lane that turned out to be Fort Washington Swim Club. He started that club. My dad is a proud Upper Dublin graduate in 1957. 3rd graduating class, voted on and selected the part of the team that picked the cardinal red and gray colors that we still see proudly today. I graduated from Upper Dublin. I played multiple sports here. I have lived here. I have never left. I went all the way to Penn State. I did do that. So that was really far away, 3 hours away. My kids, I have a son who just graduated, is currently flying to Clemson. Missing him terribly. I have another senior girl, and I have a 9th grader. I have obviously been part of these schools for 14 years as a parent. I have actually coached the high school field hockey team. I have run so much stuff at Fort Washington Elementary School, and I brought up to Mark the other day that I actually wasn't on the PTA board at Fort Washington, but he was surprised to hear that because I had been so involved, I guess. And one of my pride points of there, that Big Strides program that was referenced, an inclusive event that I just absolutely adored, and it did take a lot of time. And I did count every single lap. So any kid come up, Mrs. Vitella, how many laps did I run last month? And I could tell them how many laps I ran. And it really, I think I got out of it as much as they did. It was amazing, and I'd like to see it come back to Fort Washington. I've been the PTO president at Sandy Run Middle School for 6 years. During that time, I ran the school store out of my home during COVID. People would I'd bag over 300 bags of school supplies. People would pay Venmo and come over and pick them up at our front door. And as a result, we raised so much money that last year we made wish list items, not just for the teachers, but for the building and the staff. Anywhere from clipboards to picnic tables to a telescope for the planetarium. Over $26,000 that was raised during that COVID time and under my reign, I guess, as president. And I'm proud of that. that we were able to do that for the school. There is still money left, and I hope the new board will continue that give back. I remember volleyball net. And it's funny because one teacher asked for clipboards for the classroom. It was like $80. And it broke my heart that this person was feeling nervous about spending the money. I'm like, trust me, it's okay. We got lots of money. And I was so happy and so honored to be able to give back to Sandy Run Middle School for so many years as their president and raising that money and being able to donate all those items. As people spoke to tonight, I've been coming to these meetings. And I want to correct someone because someone said more than anybody else here, but Mark Sorota started coming to meetings as a candidate about 6 months before I started too. But that was over 10 years. I believe it was 2013 we started. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't know what draws me here. I just am fascinated. I just feel a part of it. I want to make a difference. And I'm just passionate about Upper Dublin. I love it here. And I want to always find ways that we can do better. And there is always room for improvement. No matter how good we are and how excellent we are, there is always room for improvement. And that's what I would dedicate my time for. The other great thing that I think that someone brought up the post-prom event, and that went away during COVID, and it had not come back. So last year, a team with me, we brought this back with the help of the district, of course. We had it in this building, and we hosted over 200 students that night, overnight. I don't think I slept for 48 hours. It was an amazing undertaking, and it was an amazing result. And I was so happy and proud to be part of that. And hopefully we'll do it again this year. We haven't started yet, but we will. And having been around so much, coming to so many meetings, I've gained such knowledge, really, from anywhere from finance to policies to the curriculum and to really needs and concerns of the community and what the board does on a day-to-day basis. And I would be honored, and it would be a privilege to serve and give back to the community that I love.
I'm at a time in my life now where I have the opportunity to be able to give back to the township in which I've lived for more than 30 years. My background, I was extremely active with Philadelphia High School for Girls Alumni Association, including 4 years as president, and worked with them to establish many of the things to maintain the quality of the school. I've always thought between being an educator, being involved at Girls High, et cetera, that everything we do as a school board has to be putting the student first. And that's part of my commitment, to put the students first, to make a difference with their different learning styles, to make a difference for them in terms of their being able to use technology appropriately. Teaching in a college, I'm always stunned with how the freshman college student types on Google article, hyphen, and their topic, rather than going to a database to really get appropriate articles for their work. And I think that we as a community need to help students navigate social media, but also work with them to enable them to use the internet resources appropriately. And I think that's one of the big responsibilities. You know, put the student first, look at what their learning needs are, and meet. And I'm at a time in my life when I can donate time now, give my all to helping keeping students first in Upper Dublin.
Thank you, one and all. That's all we have for what I'll call the scripted questions to everybody. As I pause deliberately to give my colleagues around the table a chance to collect their thoughts, if anyone does have a follow-up question for any or all of the candidates, now would be the time, just so everybody understands the process. Once we finish the interview process, we're going to essentially dismiss the candidates, and then we'll start the next phase of the meeting. So this is our final opportunity to elicit facts or thoughts from the candidates. Does anyone have any follow-up questions? Ms. Sherpier.
I have two questions. One is to Ms. Vitella, specifically in your question about social media. You refer to your team, and I'm just really curious who your team is.
I don't know that there's a group of people that I would never post something, that people post things to our Facebook page. And I would say that some of them are represented here. They are former running mates of mine. That the community page we have was partially started at one point for running for school board. And so the people in this room, quite a few that I've run with before, are colleagues that we would, if there's a whether to post something or not, it is a group discussion and effort with those colleagues.
So do you intend to continue working with that team?
Well, obviously, it becomes a little more complicated, and if I was on the school board, I would think that that is a different conversation, and I think that I would have to step away from that, and they would have to take over that page, because it is not necessarily appropriate that a school board member is posting these things on Facebook.
All right, thank you. Then my other question is a follow-up for Mr. Held. It looks like you have positions on a lot of boards and other activities. You're also, I believe, working for a lobbying organization. No, I misunderstood that. The role of your employer?
Correct. So I work for the American Board of Internal Medicine. We certify internists and internal medicine subspecialists. We do not do any lobbying.
So, I mean, just hearing all the things you're doing at the moment, I'm kind of wondering, do you have time to attend board meetings, prepare materials, and all of that?
Thank you for the question. And so the answer, if you had asked me this 2 years ago, would have been no. I would not have had the time. At that time, I was serving as president of the Alumni Association. That's quite time intensive, frankly. I mean, it was multiple hours a week, multiple hours a month. And so that's why I did not decide to run for the school board at that time. I wanted to wait for a moment in my life when I had the time to do so. And so my other volunteer commitments, I took those on because they're manageable in terms of my life and what other things I can do. I wouldn't be sitting in front of all of you tonight if I did not feel confident that I had the time and the bandwidth to take on the roles and responsibilities of a board member.
Thank you.
Ms. Redding.
So I have a couple questions, if that's okay. My first question is for Rachel. For question 3, when we were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you ended your statement, and correct me if I'm wrong, or to clarify or elaborate a little bit more. It's really around diversity of thought, but not necessarily a group. Can you elaborate on that statement a little bit more?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that it's just about diversity of thought, but that diversity of thought should also be a factor. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
But not necessarily a group. Can you elaborate on what you meant by that
Yeah,
comment?
I think it was more akin to not chasing whatever the most current, but making sure we're using guiding principles, a methodical approach that can be applied in a wide spectrum of situations and populations. So we're always sticking to our principles and treating people all fairly, and not catering any one solution to any one subgroup, because the subgroups who are in the most vulnerable positions will constantly be changing, or maybe not constantly, but will evolve. Does that help?
It does, thank you. So my next question actually is around question 4, which is around the how do we determine if a proposed tax increase is reasonable? So really about financial, fiscal financial responsibility. And this question is for Jenny, Joan, Rachel, and Anne Marie. Around, you all used the word balance. So I'm curious, what does balance between community and education in terms of budget mean to you? in a little bit more depth from your perspective. And I guess we can start with Ginny and then go respectively.
It's okay, I'll start. Balance is the hard thing to find, right? Because we do have, that is the missing piece and the most difficult one to find, right? And I mean, the simple thing is balancing the budget, right, Andy? It is not. But obviously, we have to make sure we're fulfilling all the needs of our students and giving them the best education possible. That is critical. That is our critical mission here, right? That all children deserve and should get the best education possible. Upper Dublin is a fantastic school district, and we need to maintain those high levels. But there is a cost. But we cannot compromise our quality education in order to balance the cost. So the cost savings in other places might be where waste is, or where our buildings are concerned, or where we might have overlapping staff positions, and maybe how we can reallocate the resources that we have to better suit, to better serve our children and our teachers and our staff and our buildings. And it is a balancing act, and there is no simple answer. It is the biggest overlying question, I think, at the end of the day, because there's all different stakeholders that have all different desires, needs, wants, and interests. And the balancing act is trying to find the fair, equitable balance, for lack of a better word, among them all, and make sure you're hearing and listening, and right? You really need to listen to where their priorities lie. And we need to balance that with how we spend, and is it smart spending, right?
Thank you, Ginny. I would say that when I think about balance in the budget, that you're looking at students first, what the students need, but then you also have to look at how are you allocating those resources. Are there vendors with whom you could negotiate and have reduce the bill? We've been your good customer for X number of years. Why are you markedly increasing this bill to us? Can we negotiate a lower bill? What can we do that is cost saving, recycling, reusing? But we also, children first. I think, as I said before, I don't want anyone leaving the school district because their children did not get what they need. But I don't want to see senior citizens feel that they have to move out of the school district because the taxes are too high. And that's where the balance comes in, meeting students' needs, but also looking at what changes or what modifications we can make so that tax increases are not huge. Does that kind of answer your question?
So I'm going to try to answer this question without saying the word balance, but no promises. So instead of balance, I would say maybe another word we could use is to consider competing needs, consider all the needs, all the requests, all the competing priorities. And you have to look in a cost-benefit analysis, look at the data, look at the metrics, look at what other districts are doing, and most importantly, look for opportunities to compromise so there are more winners who get some of what they need instead of some parties getting all that they need and others getting none.
So my idea about finding a balance between what the needs of the students are and the school district as a whole, because it does, include the teachers, the staff, everybody is part of the school district, balancing those budgetary needs with what the need for members in the community to not feel like they are experiencing too much of a burden with their taxes. I know there are certain populations in the community that's more of an issue for than others, and any little increase can have a big impact on them. So I think the balance needs to be just carefully considering every aspect before you make decisions about the budget, and seeing, as everybody has already said, what can be cut, what changes can be made, where money can be saved, and where it can't. And some things just can't be negotiated with. So that's how I see balance.
Thank you.
Just given that we had 4 people answer that, Mr. Held, do you want to chime in on the balance question? Don't feel like you have to, but I want to give you the opportunity. You're good? Okay. Mr. Warschauer.
Thanks, Mr. Wallach. I have a follow-up question for Ms. Vitella. In the answer to, I think it was question 3, about a point of pride for the district being diversity, equity, inclusion, you mentioned the work of equity groups. We have equity groups that meet to discuss the needs of and advocate for rights of marginalized populations. You mentioned that they themselves could be more inclusive. I just wanted you to clarify what you meant.
When they were being brought to the table originally, how many years ago? I don't remember now at this point. I'd say at least 6.
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 4, actually, because it was
really?
definitely under Dr. Yanni, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. It was not yesterday. When they were being, so the African American Equity Group actually does a great event that's inclusive of everybody for the community. And I think that that is a great way. The Asian American community has a Chinese New Year celebration that was at the high school before COVID, and that was an amazing event. So I think that inviting people that may not fit into one of those categories to come to those meetings and be a part of the conversation and learn more about what their needs are, where they're feeling vulnerable or not, or marginalized or anywhere else. I might not be able to see through that lens. And if I meet with a group of people in one of these groups, then maybe I would learn a lot more about it, and I would be able to help in any way I could possibly help and actually learn about it. And again, I love the events that are inclusive of all the community. I think that's a great way to share. Okay.
Ms. Iannetti.
I'm going to do a follow-up to the follow-up. So do you think it's okay if the equity group itself decides the safest thing for them to do is not publicize their events?
Yes, and I know that that's come up. Absolutely. It would obviously only be what they're comfortable for, and they would obviously have their meetings where they all feel comfortable. But I would also hope and encourage a more public dialogue and conversation in a forum that they are comfortable in sharing, so that they can educate and help people understand where they're feeling vulnerable or marginalized, and where we can do better as a district to help them.
Any other follow-ups? Dr. Thomas is raising her hand.
Rachel and John speak to their vision for promoting and ensuring meaningful inclusion for students with special needs within our district, and what strategies they would advocate as a school board member.
So my understanding is that there are groups currently working on these topics, and I would want to meet with them and get recommendations, because this is not my area of expertise. So I'm eager to contribute, but I don't claim to have really a solution. My role would be to listen and learn and provide my input with a critical eye as to what has worked in other places, what has failed in other places, and the unique needs of that population. I would need to learn. I don't really have a suggested strategy at this time.
So like Rachel, I'm also not an expert in this area. I do have family members in this district who have students in the school that have special needs. And when I asked them, and they knew I was running for this position, they raved about the opportunity that their children are getting here and the attention that the school district has paid to their needs. And so I would continue in that vein, that it's listening, it's engaging with groups of parents and learning what their needs are. Nobody knows better than them what their students need and what their children need. And so I think we need to continue learning from that. And then a lot of this goes back to how do you allocate your financial resources? What's important to you as a community? So ensuring that as we're thinking about things like budgets and we're thinking about long-term planning and projecting the student population, it's ensuring that we're caring for all students, especially those that have special needs, because they need our support more than anybody.
Anything else from on Zoom? Seeing nothing. Last chance going around the table. All right, to the candidates, thank you again so much. If you could just excuse yourselves back into the gallery with the community, and we thank you for your time, your answers, your honesty, your candor, and your interest. At this time, I think we're going to take just about a 2 or 3 minute pause in case anyone needs to use the facilities, and we do have a personal matter that somebody needs to attend to up here. So we're just going to pause for a couple of minutes, and facilities are outside if anybody needs them. Say like 5 minutes, and then we'll be back at 1:15 at the latest. Board members, no discussions. Please, 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 please. Thank you, Mr. Diazio. All right, everyone, thank you for that pause. If everyone could take their seats, and we can continue. All right, if everyone, we're going to resume now. We now move into the part of the agenda and the part of our meeting where there can be comments, there can be deliberations, there can be discussions, if or as necessary, and then we'll have a nomination process. So I will open the floor to anyone that wishes to make comment. I will just add, again, and it'll probably sound like a broken record, but a thank you to everyone that interviewed. We have an amazing group of 5 candidates to make a difficult decision from, in my view, personally. Is there any comments or discussions that any board members would like to start? Ms. Sherpier.
I don't need to start, but I'm happy to be the one to starting. I think I have 2 comments or observations. The first one I think is, and that's primarily directed for those of you in the audience and for people watching. Throughout this process, I get the impression that somehow people are struggling or not sure how to get information from the district or contact the board. The board is absolutely available for conversation. The board is absolutely available for, you can email us, you can call us, you can meet us in the street or meet us anywhere. I'm a little disturbed by the fact that people sort of seem to get the impression that we are this group that doesn't want to talk or that doesn't want to communicate. That is, I think, as far from the truth as I could possibly say it. So please, 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 don't be intimidated. Ask. If you have a question, we need to know. If you have a concern, we need to know. There have been several community members who've reached out to me, and I've asked them for a conversation. I said, can we talk? Sometimes people do, and some people don't. But please, 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 there is absolutely no reason not to reach out directly to the board. That's number one. The other comment I wanted to make is, as I was listening to our 5 candidates, clearly every single one of you has an interest in the district and doing what is best for kids, for the community, for taxpayers, for us as a whole. And to me, that's really exciting because we all want to be moving forward. We may have different ideas on how that's best done, but we all want to move forward. What I think is where I see distinctions is the different levels of participation in the process. Some people are very hands-on, want to be in the schools, want to work with kids, want to do things, very practical solutions. The position that we're looking for is one more of governance. And in some ways, you could look at it as very boring, right? Many of you are doing much more exciting work, much more gratifying by interacting directly with kids. Spending a lot of hours reading materials, talking, doing research is a little lonely at times, but it's a necessary part of the process. So when I'm looking at at our 5 candidates, that is what I'm looking at. Who do I think can do the governance? I think a number of you may be better suited at this point to be more actively involved hands-on. But that's just my personal observation. Thanks.
Mr. Serota?
I want to echo that first comment from Ms. Trippier, that I appreciate the comment somebody made at the mic earlier that we're busy people and you don't necessarily want to bother us. But at least speaking for me, I love this stuff. Like, I love talking about it. Someone who's here in the audience today talked to me at the deli counter at George's for 40 minutes a couple weeks ago. And that's fine. Like, I mean, unless I have stuff that needs to get in the fridge, then, it's, please don't be uncomfortable talking to us. We're all members of the community. We got involved because we want to give back to the community. You're all part of the community. We're not others. We are part of us. So yeah, please be willing to do that. In terms of what I'm looking for, I want to be clear. All 5 candidates presented themselves extremely well tonight. As I've said, when we've gone through this process in the past, it feels like an embarrassment of riches that we have a school district where we have so many people who are interested in participating in it. That's not true everywhere, and we really are blessed here in Upper Dublin to have what's already a great school board and more people who want to be a part of it. I'm looking for someone who is open-minded, able to learn, big picture, long-term thinker, believes in public education for all, believes in public education and believes in education for all, and understands the role. Both the authority and the restrictions that we're working with. So that's sort of the framework that I'm looking at this through. And when we get to talking about individual candidates, that's how I'm going to be making my evaluations. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Any comments or questions? I mean, we can talk broadly, as we've been doing. If anyone wants to talk about specific qualities or specific answers, now is an opportunity to do that. We don't foreclose that, but the next step, just so everybody knows, is that if I move past this type of discussion format for the board, I'll then call for nominations, and any board member can nominate any one of the 5. Nominating a candidate doesn't necessarily mean you're ultimately going to vote for them. That's just kind of a fact. You can nominate anybody you want of the 5. But
Can I interrupt
Yeah,
briefly?
sure.
Just to be clear, legally speaking, and Mr. Diazio will correct me if I'm wrong, we can actually nominate anyone. It doesn't have to be one of the 5. I don't anticipate that happening.
Correct.
But we, at this point, there's no restriction that we have to pick one of these 5.
Correct. That's correct.
Good clarification. Is there anyone else who wishes to engage in any type of discussion? I'm looking on Zoom. Ms. Evans, Dr. Thomas, any board member? Oh, Ms. Evans' hand went up.
Meetings. No, I'm not normally this quiet. It's just this Zoom format makes it a little bit more difficult. I just wanted to say thank you as well to the candidates. You know, this is an extremely odd way to interview for a position. You know, you sat there and I think answered the questions with a lot of grace. I think I learned a lot about why you're interested in the position, what you would be about as school board member. So please know that I think Mr. Wallach put it well earlier. Although we can only pick one, you know, I think there are a lot of talented people who are interested in this position. And again, I'm super impressed at everybody's poise and candor, and just really wanted to thank you.
I think we all echo those sentiments around this table, no doubt. Ms. Sherpier's going back for second
more,
bite
yeah,
at the
I'm
apple.
really greedy today. No, I just wanted again for everybody's benefit to know that this interview process is really tough. There's actually 4 members at this table who've gone through this ourselves in different formats. 2 of us got elected to the position, 2 of us did not, yet at some point came back later. So I think no matter where this goes, if you have an appetite to be on this board, and if you do not get selected this time around, there's going to be room and opportunity down the road, certainly in 2 years when there's elections. And again, I want to express my great thanks and gratitude for everybody who sat up there, because it is not an easy task. You did it, and you did it in front of everybody. So thank you very, very much for that.
Ms. Iannides reaching for the mic.
Yes, I really admire everyone that came up and participated. I kind of wanted to say what I was looking for as they were answering questions. So I'm looking for someone who really understands governance and what our role is. And Aticha, you said it very well, that you're not working directly with kids or teachers. You're up at a higher level. I heard some wonderful answers tonight, but I just wanted to kind of share that. That's the criteria that I'm using, and not just the interview tonight. We also have the application and the resumes.
Ms. Redding's grabbing the mic.
So I'll echo a deep sense of gratitude for everyone that, for the community members who spoke on behalf of their experience, but also to all the candidates who shared their experience, not only with the board, but with the entire community. When I think about what I'm looking for and what I'm thinking about, it's not necessarily having the answer, but on a quest to seek the answers. What questions are you asking? How are you engaging with the board members as well as the community? I'm also thinking a lot was said about diversity, and I'll play off of diversity of thought. It's once the thought is presented into the room, how do you react? What do you do with it? How do you begin to move it forward so that person feels a sense of inclusiveness as well as belonging within the community? So it's something that I'm also considering as we make this decision tonight. So I want to thank you all again. but also think there's a curiosity to how do we proceed as a community, as a board, but then also how do we take diverse ideas and integrate them into our community and respond appropriately.
Anyone else? I'm looking around. I'm looking on Zoom. I'm looking everywhere. All right. I think at this point, I will open the floor for nominations that any board member would like to make. I will jump in the pool first if people would like me to do so. Whoop.
Go ahead.
We okay, Ms. Evans? Was that just?
Oh, Ms. Evans, was that your hand raised?
It was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Janet, go ahead. You go first.
No,
Oh,
I'd like to nominate John Held.
okay. I would like to nominate Rachel Shannock. Ms. Sherpier?
I'd like to nominate Ann Barnes.
Nominations? Nominations? Seems to have quieted. If people would like to close nominations, we can entertain a motion to close nominations.
I motion to close nominations.
Ms. Redding, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, nominations are closed. We now move to voting. And as we know, we vote by secret ballot. So if every board member could kindly take the form in front of them, place your name, and select the candidate that you're voting for, and then I think Mr. Leckman is going to do the collecting, and then Ms. Evans will read the results by name, so everybody will know who each board member voted for, but we do it by secret ballot in order that no one vote influences any other vote. Okay, when everybody's ready, you can just, Mr. Leckman will circulate it. Just so the record's clear, Ms. Evans and Dr. Thomas are going to submit their written ballot to Ms. Evans directly, and once Ms. Evans has those plus the written tablets, then she'll be able to read all of the votes. I'm sorry. As soon as Ms. Evans on the screen and Dr. Thomas get their votes to Ms. Brooke Evans, then Ms. Evans, Ms. Brooke Evans, and Mr. Lackman will be able to announce the votes. Whenever you two are ready.
We have everything submitted, so we'll read it now. So I'll start with the online. Ms. Evans voted for John Held. Dr. Thomas voted for John Held. Alima Redding voted for Rachel Shannock. Mrs. Sherpier voted for Anna Marie Barnes. Mr. Wallach voted for Rachel Shannock. Mr. Sirota voted for John Held. Mrs. Ionity voted for John Held. And Mr. Warschauer voted for Rachel Shannock. Just a second.
That appears to be 4 votes for Mr. Held, 3 votes for Ms. Shannock, and 1 vote for Ms. Barnes.
We agree, yep.
Okay.
So in order for there to be a consensus this evening, one candidate would need to get 5 votes. So after this first round of voting, we don't yet have a selected director. The board can continue to have deliberations, and you can make nominations again, and we can vote again. You're not limited to the 3 individuals that you voted on the first time. Additional names can be put into nomination, or individuals who nominated someone last time don't need to nominate again. So we're basically starting over at this point.
Okay. So everybody and anybody has to be or can be renominated?
That's correct.
Okay, okay. Everybody got that? We're clear on that? Okay, so we can have any discussion if any people would like to engage in any type of deliberation or discussion. Ms. Ionetti.
I would like to talk a little bit about why I voted for John. One of the things that he said is when we asked about the chain of command. So question number 1, he said the board is a bridge for the community to the administration. And I think that is the best answer that we got about that question, that he understands our role in governance. When we asked him about tensions in the communities, he talked about building a bigger tent. He talked about lowering the temperature, meeting people in person, having more town halls. When we asked about diversity, he did not shy away from that question. I felt like some people did. And he talked about increasing our staff diversity. He made a connection with himself as a young child, having a male teacher and how that impacted him. When we asked about the levels of taxation, okay, he said that he talked about that he said allocate financial resources to all students is what I wrote down. So he really talked about, he didn't separate out money and for students. He said, put the money where your values are. Okay, so that was different from the other answers that I heard. When we talked about the results-driven environment where swift action and outcomes are often expected, he said to tell the community, we hear you and we will answer as completely as possible. I thought that was another good answer. He acknowledged that social media leads to divisiveness and that it can be used as a listening tool, but it's better to have face-to-face discussions. So that also stands out from a lot of the other answers. And he said he loves Upper Dublin, and it was so nice to hear that, hear something positive. I would love to have that positive voice on the board. I mean, not that we don't, but I would love to have another one. When he talked about coaching in his application, he said that his kids probably weren't the best athletes, but he really helped them feel good about themselves and be the best player that they could be. So he had so many answers that really communicated to me he knows what governance is, what the role is here, and his values seem in line with the Upper Dublin community at large. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Warschauer.
I didn't have a chance yet to thank all the candidates tonight and everybody who came out to speak, to thank you. I want to offer some rationale about casting my vote for Ms. Shannock. What I heard through multiple answers is what I would characterize as a very deliberative approach to thinking about problem solving. Hearing her speak about making sure that we have data and evidence that supports decisions. And I think what struck me in a question about this being a fast-paced environment where quick results are expected is resisting the temptation to get a quick win for a longer-term result that's more meaningful. And when I think about the qualities of a board member, I think that the impulse to be deliberative, to be evidence-based, which I heard her describe across multiple domains, struck me as a really strong answer. Thanks.
Ms. Sharpier.
Yeah, I think both Ms. Barnes and Ms. Shannock were the ones who I think had the most governance potential, in the sense that they were listening. They weren't ready with all the answers. They didn't have preconceived notions. I think there was a willingness to be open-minded and recognizing that they didn't know everything yet, and a willingness to learn. What I liked especially in Ms. Barnes's comment when we were talking about finances is that there's a lot of state and federal limitations. And as a board, we are very much constrained by our policies, by our financial obligations. And I think a number of and that's what I mentioned earlier, I think a number of the other candidates have a lot of interests in doing good by the students or by the taxpayers, by the community, but more on actionable items rather than big picture items. And I think it's important that we're looking at people who are maybe, more willing to say, hey, we don't know everything, but I will learn and I will listen.
Ready?
I'll speak to Ms. Rachel Shannock when she really opened this up and talked about what does a school board do in terms of administration and governance. She answered, she took the opportunity to learn and collaborate, and I think that's what we do is we're constantly learning and we're constantly collaborating with the board, with the community, with the staff, with the superintendent here. I also take into account her experience of running a practice on the business side as well as with managing patients and people. I think there's a certain skill set that comes with understanding how to grow a business and move a business forward, and a certain skill set with managing the people within the practice and the patients within that practice as well. I also liked her answer, and it really showed me insight into the practicality when asked question 4 around the financial responsibility of the school board, and that's really how do we use data to make decisions. There was a certain level of curiosity to the way she answered the questions, an openness and open-mindedness and willingness to learn, and to not use past experience, but how do I look at this through a fresh eye? And I think about that's something that we continuously need is a different perspective of how do we take on certain problem solving, or how do we react to certain situations that may come up, or how do we partner with the superintendent to make some of the decisions that need to be made, as well as the executive team. So that's why I went with Rachel. She's excited about the opportunity. She put her hat in with a small 4-year-old at home, and had the business background as well as the people background to support what we do here on the board.
Mr. Sirota. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Who do we have here? Ms. Evans or Dr. Thomas?
Go ahead.
Ms. Evans.
Yeah, so I similarly wanted to talk about why I voted for Mr. Held, and Ms. Ionity did, she stole my thunder on several of the substantive answers. There were two other things, though, that stood out to me that I thought were also worth mentioning. The first is he has prior board experience, which is not a prerequisite, but it's certainly helpful. You know, we talked about governance, kind of understanding the role of a board as opposed to, you know, administration or being hands-on. So I do think prior board experience is certainly helpful. The other thing, though, you know, I think his background in communications, one thing that, you know, we hear from time to time, we heard it tonight, is that folks feel intimidated about communicating with us. We need to come up with, you know, more innovative ways to communicate with the community. And, you know, I think that's something to be considered as well, is, you know, what do each of us from our prior experience bring to this role? And I think, you know, with his background in communications, that could be something that could be really helpful to us as a board in better communicating with the community.
Go to Mr. Sirota next.
I want to dive into something really awkward, and I want to be clear that if I could, I would not have this conversation in public, but we are required to have this conversation in public. We are here because somebody's social media was scrutinized and a label was placed on them, which may or may not have been correct. I have no idea, but a perception was developed about a person who ended up resigning under the pressure and not wanting to be a distraction and all that. And so naturally there was a lot of scrutiny on the candidates who bravely put their name forth in this climate. And I heard from community members, about 3 of the 5 of them, that there was a concern about whether we would be jumping right back into the same situation if they were to be appointed. And honestly, this is a terrible reason to make a decision this important, in my opinion, because we don't really know that, you know, this is a perception and reality sort of situation. We don't really know what the reality is, but we know what the perception could be. And I'm really reluctant to jump in to a situation where that could happen again for a member of our community, because once you become a public figure and that kind of thing happens, it's very difficult. It's just not a huge community, and it's also really difficult for us to have to go through a process like that again. And so, because I thought we have great candidates, I'm inclined to pick one who I believe all of them are excellent, but one that I think is safer from that point of view. And that is a part of why I chose Mr. Held. I'm carefully trying to avoid being negative in my comments here, and I know that's awkward, But yeah, that's all I think I'm currently willing to say on that topic.
I think I will, I will just add, I mean, I voted for Ms. Shannock the first time I nominated her. What Ms. Redding and Mr. Warschauer said resonated with me. Couple of things that resonated. In response to one of the questions, she said, we need to understand the why, not just the why not. And it's really that thought-making or that thought-generating ability, not to say all the other candidates don't have that level of reflection, but I was really struck by, in a couple answers, that level of reflection. And I was also very struck by, and it's something maybe that didn't come out tonight, but in her application, there was a large discussion based on her professional capacity of student needs, both from the physical side and the mental health side. And in this day and age, to me, those types of things resonate. And again, not to say that the other candidates are not recognizing and passionate about those issues for our children, but it was something that really jumped out at me with Ms. Shannock. And, you know, that obviously comes from her work experience. And then I marry that up with the fact that, to me, it's a very interesting perspective to have somebody who does not yet have a child in our district, the perspective of what is it going to look like at the end of her term or at the end of this term in 2 years when she has a child either in or on the verge of joining the school district. And that view of forward-looking is not something we currently have on the board, rightly, wrongly, or indifferently. I mean, we have people with kids in the school district. We have people that are empty nesters. We have people apply in the very same format. But it really struck me as a viewpoint that could provide interesting views for our school board and our school district moving forward, that perspective of the anticipation and the long-term view from an even longer-term view in a very real sense. So that was my reasons and my logic as to how I voted the first time around. Ms. Redding.
Just to add to Mark's comment about the communication around social media, not to make it any more awkward, but I think about Ms. Shannock's example. I guess it depends on who your grandma is, right? When you're kind of thinking about, is it safe? But I understood that as, is it something that you would be proud of to share with someone that you admired and understood? So, and then to be authentic as well. And I know that John Held's comment was also very mindful of listening and being part of the community. And then he also mentioned the in-person relationships. So I think both comments, without really diving in, having not dove into their social media content, I think both kind of have the same content around it, and both feel safe for me.
Any other comments, discussion points? Oh, Dr. Thomas, I believe, is chiming in now.
I didn't have too much to add, and I don't have much of a voice, but literally. But I just wanted to echo the statements already in support of Mr. Held, and just the communication skills, the past board experience, and the track record of service that, in my view, it is really collaborative service that shows like it wasn't something that he achieved, but something that he worked with others to achieve in working on the various alumni boards and board of trustees and coaching different sports. And then again, that statement about not budgeting by cutting, but budgeting by deciding what you really value and kind of putting the money where, and speaking to what you value by where you spend the money. So that all really spoke to me. But again, the other candidates had a lot to offer as well. But just kind of going with my own gut with that. And I think sometimes too, when people didn't have an answer or know the answer, that's also an opportunity to kind of signal what your values are around a certain issue and show some general awareness around different issues. So just that ability to speak to each of the questions and kind of let us know where he stands on things. Some of the other candidates, I don't know exactly where they stand on different issues. So that's not negative or positive, just kind of neutral and kind of questioning, what their values might be around certain issues.
Ms. Ionetti?
Yes, I just, and I do think all the candidates have lots of strengths. One thing I wanted to add is that John he said he will have a elementary, middle, and high school student. So that really informs those decisions that we're making. You don't have to go and research it, you're living it every day, so I want to mention that. And one other thing, while I understand the importance of being authentic online and standing by what you say, it can be misinterpreted, and it can get out of control. So I think until we come up with a better solution, you kind of have to just step back from social media. That's my opinion.
Mr. Sirota?
I just based on Alima's response and Jen's just now, I just want to be clear that the comments that I heard about 3 of the candidates were not all about social media. It's not all. I mean, not to invalidate what you said, but just that's only a piece of it. I also wanted to comment on the notion that, well, Jeff, you brought up the perspective of someone who doesn't have kids in the school yet. And other people have brought up the perspective of having kids in the school. One of the hardest things, and this has come up previously, most recently, I think, during COVID, the early days of COVID, when we were making some extremely difficult decisions, was the challenge of separating what's good for your family for what's good for the community. And it's really hard to do when it's your own kids. So there's a double-edged sword there. I mean, it's not a pro or con, but it really is a double-edged sword. To have kids in the school certainly gives you a perspective. There's 4,100 kids roughly in the district. So you have, the perspective of one family and those who are around you, but it's certainly not all of the perspectives. And it's easy to have that tunnel vision of what you directly experience compared to what you don't. And it can be extreme, especially when the conversations are really immediate and powerful and impactful. It can be very difficult to separate what's good for your family from what's good for the community as a whole. So it really is a double-edged sword having kids in the district. It takes a certain kind of personality to be able to separate those things. And I don't know that from this brief process, really have the ability to understand who has that and who doesn't. So I don't think that's a direct factor for me. Thank you.
Any other comments otherwise?
Yeah, I think, if I look at the numbers, then we have a 4, a 3, and a 1. Right. So, I think at this point, if I look at governance and openness, then I think I'm likely to switch my vote to Ms. Shannock in the next round, if that is going to be a nomination. No disrespect at all to Ms. Barnes. I think you would have made a great board member, but I think answers during the interview process and also on paper were probably a little bit more extended by some of our other candidates. And I think for board members, sometimes as somebody said more or less is more. And I think that was perhaps potentially your perspective, but perhaps other board members didn't get a chance to get to that so much. I do value what we were just talking about, the idea of having kids in the school versus not in the kids in the school. I think it's extremely difficult to have kids in the school, be a board member and be a community member and being a parent, do it all. So that coupled with Ms. Shannock's newness to it and innocence and maybe an open-mindedness to it, I would suggest that my vote is going in that direction. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Ms. Evans.
So, yeah, I'm going to echo the comments about this just being insanely awkward. I do have a concern, and the format that we used just really didn't provide an opportunity for me to ask about this. But, you know, I do have a concern about heavy involvement in politics. We get a lot of criticism about school board shouldn't be political. We do have a candidate who has some, you know, political committee stuff on their resume, and I'm trying to keep this vague because I really, this is just so insanely awkward. That was a concern for me, if I'm being completely honest, and just something that I wish there was an opportunity to ask about, because I don't want it necessarily to be a discounting factor, but I would be remiss if I didn't express that it had some concern for me.
Other thoughts or comments? Otherwise, I'm prepared to open the floor for nominations for round 2. Are there any nominations on the floor? Remember, you can nominate anyone and everyone. Mr. Sirota.
I will nominate Mr. Held.
Thank you. I will nominate Ms. Shannock. Any other nominations? Do I have a motion to close nominations for round 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Sherpier. Is there a second? Mr. Sirota, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Nominations are closed. If every board member could please take their ballot and submit round 2 written ballot to Mr. Leckman, and our folks online will submit that to Ms. Evans.
Okay, we have them all in at this point. Again, I'll start with the emails just because that's easier to get out of the way. So we have Ms. Evans voted for John Held. Dr. Thomas voted for John Held. Ms. Sherbier voted for Rachel Shannock. Ms. Ionetti voted for John Held. Mr. Warschauer voted for Rachel Shannock. Mr. Wallach voted for Rachel Shannock. Mr. Sirota voted for John Held. And Ms. Redding voted for Rachel Shannock. So we have 4 votes for John Held and 4 votes for Rachel Shannock.
Mr. Diazio, just to confirm, 4 votes for each candidate. We do not have a majority, so we will keep going.
Correct. You can have further discussion. You could just keep repetitively taking votes. Take a brief recess. A quorum of you cannot speak to one another, but individual members are permitted to speak to one another. You may ask if anyone else would like to make a comment. As you know, there's not a lot of legal process here. Whatever tools and feedback that you think would be helpful to help the board try to make a decision, essentially, the options are somewhat limitless at this point. The only thing you can't do is have a quorum of you deliberating the matter that's not in the public setting.
Yeah, Mr. Sirota, please.
While I know that there's a good reason why the Sunshine Law encourages meetings like this to be in public, and transparency has often been a criticism, given the awkward nature of talking about our neighbors, I would appreciate a break to talk in small one-on-one or small groups under a quorum. And I understand how problematic that is, and how opaque that seems, and then, you know, possibly we come back and vote differently, but it seems to me to be an effective way to potentially break a logjam. That's a good question. Let me repeat that because right, it's all new for all of us. So a community member asked for clarification on what that would actually look like, and it's a fair question because, you know, this is all new.
You would essentially be taking a recess. You would recess this meeting for 10 minutes or however long you feel you need, and folks can get up and walk around. You can walk down the hallway, you can go into the library, you can stand here. The only thing that the Sunshine Act prohibits is 5 of you speaking together about how you're going to vote. That's not permitted.
So we, hang on for 1 second. So that's definitely a possibility on the table. I want to see people's comfort levels with that. Other options we have, I assume, we could have more discussion. I'm not sure if that breaks the log jam. We could ask the candidates to lobby for themselves in a public format. We could ask the public to lobby or not lobby for qualities. I mean, we do have options out there. I'm not averse to Mr. Sirota's suggestion. I mean, we'd have to be very regimented to make sure that we don't cross over that line. Does anyone else have thoughts of approach? Because let's just get them all on the table.
I'm not in favor of the proposal, and I'm going to nominate John Held.
Okay, that's perfectly appropriate. Nominations can be maintained at any time. We can continue discussions and we can continue nominations. Discussions, nominations? Ms. Redding?
I'm curious around, Jenna Evans brought up political affiliation for Rachel Shannock. Would you be able to elaborate more, or can we have Rachel come up? Because I may have missed that in reviewing the resume and the background of the candidate. Not that it would have influenced my decision. I'm just curious as to why it was pertinent to bring it up now.
I would love to hear an explanation about it. It's just something that the format did not permit. It was something I noticed on the resume. I'm not sure what that role entails specifically, but I would be fine for Ms. Shannock to come up and explain if that's something that we can do.
Mr. Diazio, would that be permissible? Was the will of the board?
Yes.
Should we do that by motion or discussion? What's the best way to entertain something like that?
You don't need to vote on that. I don't know that nominations were formally opened again, right? Because I hear Ms. Sherpier saying that she feels like nominations have begun, but even in that case, you can, until you vote, you could still invite candidates up to ask questions.
So we can take the comment of the nomination as a comment as opposed to a formal nomination. We can get to a formal nomination, but given that a couple board members have raised the issue, I'm inclined that we hear from Ms. Shannock so that we could get information on the table. Ms. Shannock, would you be comfortable addressing us as to the issue raised on the table?
And before she answers that question, I should also say the candidates, you're asking them for additional information. They can choose to provide that or not based on their comfort level. So
correct.
It's not a directive to come answer the question. It's a question that the board has that may be helpful in its deliberations, and whatever questions are asked, the candidates can choose whether they'd like to share or not.
And I think what I'd like to do in terms of the process is I will, in a minute, ask Ms. Shannock if she is comfortable with that. And then I think, even though it's not an issue about him, I'd like to afford Mr. Held an opportunity to comment on whatever the subject matter is, if he cares to. And he does not have to, but I want to afford that opportunity, given that we have two candidates left. So, Ms. Shannock, would you be comfortable addressing the board? Okay, you can come up to Ms. Evans. What's the easiest, the podium or one of the little mics? The podium, be great.
Okay, so yeah, I'm actually more than happy to speak about my involvement with the party in question. Is the Forward Party, which is actually only a forming political body. It's not a recognized party in the state of Pennsylvania at this time. For those who aren't familiar, the Forward Party is a movement based on the concept that 25% of the far left and 25% of the far right are quite loud and actually have a lot of influence in government, where most people are somewhere in the middle ideologically and may even have different spots on the ideological spectrum depending on one issue versus another, and the current party system doesn't really allow for that. So I don't hold a formal office. I'm on the executive committee. I have been since its inception in 2022. I'm an at-large executive committee member, meaning that I participate as I'm able in projects I believe in. So I think it's on my resume. Like I said, it's not something I'm hiding or trying to minimize. I'm actually sort of proud of it, and I think it's part of why I might be a good option, because I'm not super politically tied in either direction. If it weren't for the closed primary system, I would probably be an independent, not to get too political, but this question is about politics. So for those who don't know, I think there are 8 or 9 states in the United States that don't have open primaries, meaning independents, which is a large percentage of people, including veterans, who cannot vote in primaries. So there are organizations like Ballot PA, for one, and some others who are working towards structural improvements so that more people's voices are heard, which is something that has come up in public comments and all along. And I believe very strongly that depending where you look, there's 21 to 26,000 residents in Upper Dublin. I think something like 11,000 voted in the last election, so there's certainly unrepresented voices. But also, once you sit in any sort of a selected, appointed, or elected position, you have to represent all of those people, not just the ones that voted for you. So it is it's a movement based on structural improvements to decrease the divisiveness and polarization in the community. I believe very strongly in that, and that goes to listening to both sides, the why not, the why behind, and just applying critical thinking to everything you're presented with. And I happen to can be centrist in nature. I think that the community, the country, wherever you are, could use more of that. And I don't know if I could answer any other questions. As far as a time commitment or a formal obligation I have, that wouldn't be a conflict. And I'm confident in my ability to prioritize my time.
Thank you very much. Are there any follow-up questions for Ms. Shannock? Ms. Ioannidis got one.
So if someone was to look you up on social media right now, would there be a lot of political conversations in your social media accounts?
So I'm guessing perhaps this has already happened, but it is only things that I authentically believe in, like repealing closed primaries, independent redistricting committees. I may have my own personal views on, as everybody does, on, gosh, I'm afraid to say, but like things that aren't necessarily up for school board negotiation, like reproductive rights or things like that. So I'm not sure how far down that hole you want me to go. It's not a ton, and it's all presented with a listening voice, with grace, tolerance, and collaboration in mind. In my opinion, I welcome anyone to look. I'm not challenging anyone to look. I'm not looking for any fights or anything, but I don't think that there's anything super controversial, but of course I'm me, so I might think that, but it really is a message of collaboration, consensus, and compromise, as opposed to, as I mentioned in some of my former answers, we win, you lose. How many winners can we get? Can everybody get something and we move forward?
I have another follow-up. Do you think that this board is to the far left or the far right? Because you're talking about like you being an addition.
I think that there's a perception. I mean, there are only 4 states in the United States, I think, that allow political parties on school board elections: Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, I think, and Alabama. I could have one of those wrong. So I was surprised to learn that. And I hear the community in saying that another perspective, could be helpful. I could provide an option. I am a registered Democrat. I am forward aligned, and I'm proud to be. So I don't really know how it couldn't be, because it is all like the township Democrats.
Right, but far left. Do you think that the board is far left, and you would add something to the board to?
No, I don't. I don't know the history of every single decision that has come up. So, I would not label Upper Dublin as far left. No, not at all. I can just tell you what I have to offer.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anything else before Ms. Shannock wanders away again? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Shannock. We really appreciate that. Mr. Held, I'm not drawing you into it, but I want to give you an opportunity to offer a view or an opinion or anything that you'd like to offer, just so that we have equal time for both people. Don't feel you have to, but you're more than welcome. Please approach.
I want to say thank you to all of you, to everyone in the room, everyone that's still watching online. This is a long evening. It was a long few weeks heading into tonight. All of you at the board, at the table here, you did a lot of due diligence. You asked a lot of terrific questions. I will say that when I came in tonight, I didn't know the other candidates, but I've gotten to know Rachel pretty well. In fact, we're sitting next to each other. And so we're both cheering each other on. I think whoever the board decides on, I think you can't make a bad decision tonight. I've learned so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And so I want to thank all of you for that.
Thank you for that. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Held? Okay. I don't want to ignore Mr. Sirota's suggestion over here. There was a board member who was not in favor of that. Mr. Sirota, do you want me to continue dialogue on that, or do you?
If the board doesn't have the will to do that, and I would completely understand why, then I'm not gonna, I've made my statement, and it's, you know, if that's not the way, that's not the way. If it is the way, then great.
Mr. Warshauer, were you going to say something? You look like, okay. I mean, I think I'm sort of in Ms. Sherpier's camp that I'm a little averse to doing that. But if any other board members definitely want a sunshine law appropriate caucus, we can entertain that. Ms. Ionity suggests another nomination round and vote round and see where we get. I think that's probably a good way to go at this point. Before we move to that, are there any other questions from board members? Are there any other comments to be had from board members? Otherwise, I'm going to call for nominations. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to formally open the floor again for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Rachel Shannock.
Thank you, Mr. Warshauer. Any other nominations? Mr. Sirota is looking at me.
I was checking if DQ wanted to reaffirm her nomination, but I'll nominate Mr. Held.
Any other nominations? I'm not hearing any, so I will entertain a motion to close nominations.
So moved.
Ms. Sherpier, thank you. A second? Mr. Sirota has the second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, nominations are closed. If all board members could again vote in round 3.
Okay, all votes are in. We'll start with the email votes again. So we have Ms. Evans voted for John Held. Dr. Thomas voted for John Held. Mr. Wallach voted for Rachel Shannock. Mr. Sirota voted for John Held. Mr. Warshauer voted for Rachel Shannock. Ms. Ionity voted for John Held. Ms. Sherpier voted for John Held. And Alima, Ms. Redding voted for John Held.
Counting votes, I believe I have 5 for Mr. Held and 3 for Ms. Shannock, if I counted that correctly.
6-2.
Oh, did I count wrong? I'm sorry.
It is 6 for John Held and
6.
2 for Rachel Shannock.
Sorry, past my math hour, apologize. 6-2, that is a majority vote of the board. And so the vacant seat by the will of the board goes to Mr. Held. Ms. Shannock, thank you very much for your contributions this evening, your participation. And to all the other candidates who previously left, thank you as well. Please don't be strangers, find opportunities. Mr. Held, if you are so willing to accept the position, we are prepared to swear you in. If you'd like to come up to the podium.
I'd be honored to accept.
Thank you, Mr. Held.
Okay. So repeat after me, please, Mr. Held. I state your name.
I, John Held,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
Constitution of this Commonwealth,
Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Mr. Held, on behalf of the board, the district, the community, welcome, congratulations, and we look forward to your service on the board for the benefit of everybody I just mentioned and many others as well. It's been a long night. Are there any closing comments from anybody around the table? I think it was an interesting evening, it was a productive evening, and we look forward to moving forward. With that, we are adjourned. Everyone have, excuse me, everyone have a great evening. Thank you.